What up, what up, what up? Doing it again. Back in the house and all. We all still here? Pac-Man. Right on, man. I just sent out the notification, so it should be all right. Donald Martino, long time no chat, my friend. Good to see you, bro. What's up, A4000? Well, what's good, Donald? What you been up to, man? Welcome's back and all that. Oh, boy. It's going to take a week to finish it. Yeah. Cucumber salad, man. Man, I hear you, brother. Heck yeah, man. Keep them good genetics going. Well, that's cool, man. We'll try to entertain you for the evening. What the ever-loving fuck? Something horrible has happened. Oh, man. What is going on here? Huh. Channel. Welcome one and welcome all. So sit back, kick off your shoes and prepare to enjoy several hours of patriotic input. We've got shenanigans, chicanery and tomfoolery by the ton, nagacity, nonsense, and most of all, fun. Never forget that we are part of the greatest nation on the planet and the greatest people ever known. So damn the torpedoes, and loose the hounds of war. And enjoy this emergency broadcast of the Sick Pat Patriot Channel.
Not available in New Jersey or Hawaii. Some assembly may be required.
Right on, there we go. The damn thing wasn't working. I didn't know what was wrong with it. I was having a live moment where nothing was working. I didn't know what the hell was going on. Southern Belle, welcome back. Good to see you. Miriam, how you doing? All right, now we got the frickin' intro out of the way. Good God. Sick Pat and the Patriot Platoon. Sounds like sounds like a band name.
Get ready to hear the truth about America on a show that's not immune to the facts with your host, Dan Bongino.
All right, welcome to the Dan Bongino Show. Producer Joe, how are you today?
I'm hanging in there, babe. You ready to go?
Yeah, another early Monday morning. Up for Fox and Friends this morning. You know, live TV is great because here's the way it works, folks. For some of you who don't know, you know, you get the... They'll give you a general idea of, hey, here's what we're going to talk about and stuff like that. And so you go on the air with the, Joe, in the radio, It's probably the same way. Yeah. A general idea of, hey, we're going to talk about whatever, McConnell, Supreme Court, whatever it may be. And then there's breaking news, a great breaking news this morning. Matter of fact, they rescued the 7th and 8th child from that cave in Thailand. And you're like, all right, let's talk about the Thailand cave thing. And you just roll with it, man. So it was up early. I mean, a great story, just unbelievable heroism. I was telling the story this morning about when I was... And listen, let me just be crystal clear. I am not putting my training anywhere remotely close to that of these Navy SEALs. Oh, man. Just for context, when you're on the air, I was using a story about how we were in the Secret Service and we used to train in the helidunker, Joe, which is it's basically a cage. It's meant to simulate a helicopter crashing in water and it's supposed to teach you how to get out of it. So they put a blindfold on you and they dunk you underwater. Now, keep in mind, Joe, this is in a pool in the middle of the day that's crystal clear and there's 2 or 3 instructors around and when you're blindfolded you get disoriented. I mean, put that in the context of the heroism of these U.S. Navy SEALs and these other Thai Navy SEAls and others over there. It ain't no pool, folks. They're in a dark cave, constricted passageways, dealing with kids with no expertise in this at all. So God bless them, man. What unbelievable heroism.
Real quick, I have a background in diving. Yeah. I dove for years and years in the underwater photographer.
Is that right? What haven't you done, Armacost?
I've won a national contest, a photo shoot. I'm amazed at what they're doing. It's incredible.
Oh my gosh, and it'd be under this compressed timeline now because the rains are going to pick up.
Man,
God bless them.
God bless them.
I know the left can't stand it when we say thoughts and prayers. I always get Twitter backlash, but your prayers matter big time. So, all right. So it's interesting. I've been up, we're recording the show now. I've been up already for about 5 hours.
You sound like it too. You sound like you're wired, dude.
Oh man, I'm always wired. That's like my brain is definitely wired towards a higher level of base level activity. All right. Today's show brought to you by our buddies at WaxRx. You all know how much I love my sponsors, and I only work with companies that I believe in and products I can use. And testify to their authenticity and their effectiveness. And that'll be valuable to you as well because I care about my audience here. WaxRx is not the sexiest product in the world to talk about, let's be honest. But as I've told you before, I had a really serious problem with earwax buildup when I was in the Secret Service, plugging that earpiece in my ear all day. If you can't hear, you can't work. The story I'm about to share illustrates how the right product can change your life. This is from a listener whose nephew had his life changed by WaxRx. Says, my nephew Brandon dreamed of becoming an EMT and entered training. However, he quickly discovered he could not hear through his stethoscope. Without being able to hear the patient's breathing or heartbeats, he simply wasn't going to successfully complete his EMT training. We recommended he try WaxRx, and he used it to clean his ears. Amazingly, he removed a large blockage of wax from both sides. We get stories like this all the time, by the way. Instantly, he could hear everything, including through his stethoscope. With his hearing restored, he finished his EMT training and is now an EMT. Right now, you can try the WaxRx system by typing in GoWaxRx.com. That's GoWaxRx.com. Use offer code Dan at checkout for free shipping. Don't wait. You have no idea what you might be missing because of inner earwax. Who knows? It might just change your life. GoWaxRx.com. Offer code Dan. Okay. I got a lot to get to today. Big weekend of news, but story numero uno. The left changing their story again on the Donald Trump team, alleged Russian collusion X-Files fairy tale case. Folks, the story has changed 5, 6, 7 times, and now it relates to current news because, as you will see in my show notes today, I have a CNBC article in there, which is actually pretty interesting. The left's new talking point, Joe, about Russian collusion is stop Donald Trump's Supreme Court nominee because he's under investigation for colluding with the Russians to throw an election. Sorry if it sounds like I'm fade, because I'm backing away from the mic, laughing hysterically, because the left has now changed its story for the umpteenth time. Trump was under investigation personally. His team was under investigation. He wasn't under investigation. His team wasn't under investigation. Now they're under investigation again. You know, why is all this happen? Because the left are frauds. Ladies and gentlemen, these are complete frauds. I want you to understand that I am a conservative because at least we're authentic. You may not agree with us, that's fine. But our positions on things, authentic conservatives, does not change.
Right.
Economic liberty, economic freedom, healthcare liberty, education liberty, a limited state and unlimited individual. We believe in that. We don't vary from that at all. The left will say anything to obtain power because the very essence of socialism, democratic socialism, communism, it's all the same thing, despite what their protestations otherwise. The end goal is control. Right. It's power and political control. The ends justify the means to them, meaning whatever they have to do, lie, cheat, or steal to get to an ends, which is obtaining and maintaining power over your lives. That's what they'll do. Now, I only bring this up because the CNBC article, their new focus group tested talking point is that, and I'm quoting here, it's a president under investigation for colluding with a foreign national to interfere with an election should not be allowed to appoint someone to the Supreme Court. That was liberal Senator Jeff Merkley on the Democrat side. Now, just what, Joe, a month ago, maybe a month and a half ago, maybe less than that, when it was uncovered that they employed a spy to go and target the Trump team. When this was uncovered, they ran from the fact that they were investigating the Trump team and said, no, we were investigating the Russians. So first, to make the Trump team appear that they were under investigation before the election, to tarnish them and tar and feather them, to make them look unelectable, Joe, the Trump team and Trump were under investigation for colluding with the Russians. After the election, they stuck to that script. When it was uncovered that there was a spy, folks, don't let any of this go. They're expecting you to forget this. They insisted that it wasn't the Trump team that was under investigation. They were investigating the Russians. Joe, cue up. You have that clip of Clapper? In case you think I'm making this up, this is like the 5th time now we've had to play this cut. Here is Jim Clapper actually saying it wasn't the Trump team. They were investigating the Russians because they did not want to be involved in a scandal that involved them spying on the Trump team.
And it had nothing to do with spying on the campaign per se. It was about the Russians.
But wait, what? That's not what they're telling us today, Joe. I just quoted you from the CNBC piece.
No.
Democrat, it's shocking, Joe. Democrat Senator Merkley, a president under investigation for colluding with a foreign national to interfere with an election. What is it? So now you were spying on the Trump team again? Folks, these people are complete, total, utter frauds. They are liars. They have not an ounce of spine in them. They are amoebas. They are amoeba-like creatures. These are inauthentic human beings. They are not genuine. They have no character at all. The left will change their mind on anything. Now, again, in an effort, because now that thanks to the media, the hacks in the media covering up the disaster, which I'm not done with, by the way, I'm going to get to this in a second, spying operation on the Trump team, the fact that they now know that the Federal Bureau of Investigation, in conjunction with the intelligence community, had deployed spy assets to spy on members of the Trump team. Now that story has died down in collusion with the media, now they can go back to making Trump try to look bad again by lying and saying he's under investigation for colluding. This is what they do. I wanted to bring that up because this speaks to, again, the it's what do they call it? Trump derangement syndrome, whatever. Yeah. It's just insane. It's really Trump insanity. It's not even deranged. It's pure utter insanity. The left. I'm going to get into a little. I want to get into something in a few minutes here, and I want you to roll with me because this is really important stuff. But this is, as I've said repeatedly, this is the gift of Donald Trump. I'm going to explain something to you right now, having run for office, being involved closely with a lot of politicians, understanding how they work, having dealt with this through 3 election cycles when I ran, and being involved in the activist community, Joe. One of the things I see about Donald Trump, and one of the assets, the tremendous assets, the gift he's been to our movement, is his willingness to weather a storm. We've never seen this before. The standard Republican approach to elected office has been to trial balloon something, Joe. Leak a story about what you're intending to do. We're going to cut taxes on Joe Armacost, whatever it may be. You leak it. You don't put it out as a formal policy. Wait for the media and Democrat activist group response. Hear it out, feel it out, take its blood pressure, right? If it's overwhelmingly negative and the media echoes the message and it's really loud and they can get the public on their side to a massive gaslighting effort, telling falsehoods, telling them confidently, telling them over and over again, the Republicans will retract and move away. Or if it's already been announced, they'll apologize and rescind it. Trump does not do this, ladies and gentlemen. He doubles down. He hits a brick wall and he gets a jackhammer and goes right through it. So the left does not know how to respond because they've never experienced anything like this before. They're used to the tactical retreat. And now that they're in a boxing match where their entire strategy, Joe, has been around a videotape of a guy, they've been video of their opponent who always tactically retreats, and they've been working their footwork and their attack game around that opponent. They are entirely unprepared for getting in the ring, and all of a sudden, the guy turns into Clubber Lang in Rocky III, who keeps coming forward and forward. They're like, wait, what do we do? They don't know what to do. So they are responding in almost violation of their own prior tactical norms. Is this making sense?
Oh, yeah.
And it's leading to complete tactical chaos on the left. Folks, what they're doing is not helping. I'm going to elaborate on this in a second. They are resorting to, because they're used to this tactical retreat. They are not accustomed to boxing against a boxer who now is not retreating, and not only is not tactically retreating, but is tactically coming forward. What do they say in boxing? The best defense is a good offense. When you're punching, the other guy is thinking about his defense and not thinking about hitting you. I love boxing analogies. You can probably tell I did it for a long time. And again, we'll leave the violent stuff to the left. That's their thing. But boxing analogies in terms of competition. Boxing's a sport. It's not a fight. Fights happen in the street. Boxing is a sport. I always think of some of the Tyson lines. So Tyson had some of the best lines around. Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face in boxing. And it's true. When you all of a sudden you have this tactical plan and it's interrupted by something you didn't expect. What is the other one? They say the best punch in the world is the one you never saw coming. If you don't see it coming, you don't know how to respond. Again, this is meant as a sporting analogy, but it's important because the left doesn't know what to do here. They don't understand. And they're responding with higher, more elaborate, ridiculous, absurd levels of rhetoric. Now, Joe pulled this from Dick Durbin this morning. You have that one, Joe? This is a good one. Joe sent this over this morning. This is Dick Durbin. Again, normally a more tactical, he's a senator from Illinois, Democrat, of course, big liberal Democrat. This is normally a more tactically reserved and efficient politician. I don't mean efficient economically speaking. His policies are disastrous. I mean, I don't like the guy's policies, obviously, but he's normally more tactically sound when it comes to the politics, using focus group tested talking points, moving the public needle by using these talking points to move the media narrative and to alter the narrative. This is him using an absolutely ridiculous, absurd analogy because his game before using more nuanced analogies didn't work. So now they have to up the level of their rhetoric to absolute absurdity.
Hearts and prayers are with those boys in Thailand trapped in that cave. I hope our hearts and prayers are also with thousands of children, toddlers and infants removed from their parents by the Trump administration under zero tolerance. They're trapped in a bureaucratic cave too. So let's not forget them.
Dude. Dude, remember the Rob Snyder YouTube clip that's, the multiple ways to say dude? You got the serial killer around the corner. Dude, you're confused. Dude, you're surprised. Dude, right? This is one of those, dude, are you crazy? Are you making an analogy between these boys trapped in this cave in Thailand and Trump's immigration policy? This is what happens. Because, folks, please understand what's happening now. None of this is helping the Democrats, and I'm not here to give them advice. Because I'll get emails saying, stop giving advice. Listen to me. It doesn't matter. They cannot control themselves. They have lost all their bearings. They are not moored to a pier, to a dock, anything anymore. They are out in an open ocean of stupidity, wandering around with no lodestar to guide them back to shore because they don't know how to respond. They have been trained for 30 years now, if not more. Hit the Republicans hard, use the media, accuse them of the standard talking points. They don't like grandma. They don't like dogs and puppies. They want, they don't like babies. They don't like single moms. They don't like people who are black, Hispanic. They don't just name the list. This is what they do. Republicans have tactically retreated and they claim victory. This is the video they were watching on their opponent forever. This is what they trained for. They're not trained for Trump at all. So they're losing their minds. They're changing their talking points in and out day by day, forgetting we have a conservative media that can, like this show right here, that can just replay Jim Clapper from a month ago. Trump team under investigation. It was we were after the Russians. Today, Jeff Merkley, the Trump team's under investigation. They don't know what they're doing. Dick Durbin, the boys trapped in a cave. They're similar as same thing as a bureaucratic cave. Are you crazy, dude?
Holy cow.
It's Joe. It's insane. These people are nuts. They're losing their mind. I call it the liberal rage campaign. This is not helping. But understand this. This is a movement embedded knee deep in emotion, ladies and gentlemen. The emotion is that this is all they have. The left does, the far left. I'm not talking about all Democrats here, but the far left does not have reason. Reason is not a staple of their movement. Their movement is emotion. Reason would be based on a fact and data based analysis of their policies. A fact and data based analysis of their policies, whether it's inner cities or states largely run by liberals, would lead to disastrous outcomes. The collapse in San Francisco, they can't even have conventions there anymore. People are canceling because of people in the streets doing drugs, and there's human waste all over the place. You go to places like Baltimore, the collapse of the economy because of 50 plus years of far left policies. So what do? They rely on emotion. We're about compassion and tolerance. It's all an emotion. When you rely on emotion, and that emotional game doesn't work, and you don't have reason to fall back on, you have to up the emotion levels. That makes sense? So the emotion was a 3. It worked in the past. Now we're going to up it to a 4. Now a 5. Now you start getting it to 8 or 9, and now you're in the pure rage category.
Yeah.
They don't have anything else, ladies and gentlemen. The rage campaign continues. Now, I have a great piece by Daniel Greenfield for Front Page Mag about this rage campaign, how this is nothing new by the left. It's at the show notes today at Bongino.com. If you subscribe to my email list, I'll email these to you. But please check it out. And I'm going to make a connection here, and I need you to bear with me for a minute. I want to show you how this is going to backfire badly in their faces here, the left.
All right.
Joe, the rage campaign. The rage campaign largely relies on what Greenfield refers to as covert support. It's the left, people who are kind of mainstream left figures, elected politicians. Their ideas are fringe, but they're not fringe. Right. You have kind of what they would call like the centrist Democrats, whatever they may be, even though none of their ideas are centrist, but you get the point. Mm-hmm. They rely on covert support for them. In other words, these people aren't called out. They aren't called out by the media. And when I say that, I mean the rage people, the people stalking McConnell, stalking the DHS secretary. There was a lady who started verbally accosting Steve Bannon in a bookstore this weekend. These people are generally not called out by the majority of mainstream figures in the Democrat Party, which leads to kind of a covert support, a tacit support. Mm-hmm. This doesn't happen on the right. If you're on the right and you attack someone, you will be there's nowhere in polite company you'll be accepted. And folks, that's one, I of course agree with that. I don't think we should be obviously violently accosting or harassing anyone. We're more than welcome, obviously, to petition public officials, but, harassing people is not, it's just not sane. It's not rational. It just doesn't, it's just stupid. There's no home on the right for that. Matter of fact, there's a great video this weekend of these Trump supporters, and a couple of folks showed up with some really nasty ideas, and the Trump supporters kicked them right out of there. But they get this, the left gets this covert support because they're not called out. You saw this in the 60s and 70s, too. And Greenfield mentions this in the piece. He refers to another piece in Politico where this is not, new. The 60s and 70s, which you, Joe, lived through. You saw this rage campaign as well about the Vietnam War. But he brings up a great point. This is a terrific point. And this is from a Politico piece he cites in there about the left's ongoing rage campaign. Joe, the majority of Americans in the 60s and 70s, towards the end of the war, in the 70s in that case, objected to the Vietnam War. But this is interesting. This is fascinating. Even more Americans opposed the Vietnam War protesters, even though they objected to the war. This led to a massive backlash. Remember the Nixon presidency? You would obviously remember a lot better than me, being that I was a small child at the time. But the Nixon presidency was based on law and order. That was his thing, running against this societal chaos. Right. And there was a massive backlash. This is what surprises me about the left, that they don't see this coming. That they don't understand that trying to imbue their movement with a sense of aggression, confrontation, violence, chaos. This is not going to end well for them electorally. They are going to be wiped clean and out of power. The backlash for people craving some sanity in their lives is going to be significant, and we've already seen this. This record's already been played. Yep. Nixon won in a landslide, by the way, on a law and order platform from people who are like, all right, again, that number, don't forget that number. I object to the war, but I object to this, too. Yeah. The opposition using these tactics to, in some cases, aggressively confront other people. This will backfire. Now, I want to tie this into so I got so much to get to. The weekend's always like bury me in news. I got to get it all to you. I want to tie this to a podcast I heard this weekend. One of my favorites, if you're a regular listener to the show, is Russ Roberts' Econ Talk. It's a really great podcast. Yeah, it's what Joe's giving me the heads up. Yeah, it's great. I love it. It's such a great show. It's a once-a-week show. Mm-hmm. It's an hour long. It's a little wonky at times. He's a very soft-spoken guy. He lives actually in Maryland, Joe, Montgomery County, which is odd because he's more of a libertarian. I don't know how he survives over there in Montgomery County, but that's so liberal. But it's a really good podcast. And he had Arnold Kling on, who's been on before, and they were talking about what are these things they call mounds, like mounds of civilization. I want to explain this for a second. He's talking about it. He's making an anthropology analogy. How when you do an anthropology dig and you see civilizations, that the latest finds are obviously the people who lived closest to your dig. And as you go deeper and deeper, you get older and older and older and older and down. And he makes this comparison to civil norms that have developed over time. How civil norms feed on each other, and how society, let's use the United States as an example, collectively speaking, how we learn how to deal with each other through mounds and mounds of civil norms that have been handed down and over, like an anthropological dig. Mm-hmm. And he makes a really cool point. He loves stories. He says, Joe, how do you know when you go to the food court in the Annapolis Mall or wherever you go, the Arundel Mills Mall, I know Joe's area well, he used to live there. How do you know that the napkins are free? Is there a sign?
No, they've always been free, dude.
Yeah, but how do you know that? I'm serious. How do you know? And the fact that you don't know answers my question.
I know.
There's no sign. Did anyone ever tell you that?
No.
No,
they don't have to. The damn napkins are free.
Right. But this is a great point they make in this podcast, that The civil society, over time, there are rules that you don't necessarily know who told you. You may have seen it. It may be social modeling. And the great part of the podcast is he talks about the intersection between sociology, or the study of groups of people, and economics, which is really the study in many essences of human of the human utility function, how we individually act when we require things and want things, right? But you may have seen it, like you may have modeled behavior. You may have been in this food court one day and noticed a few people walk up and took napkins and didn't pay. But the point is, you don't remember.
Right.
You just know it's. But the soda's not free. Right? The trays aren't free. The trays are cheap. Why don't you just walk out with a tray? And because you've never seen anybody do it, or you did and someone got arrested. The point is, folks, is the podcast explains how these civil norms develop over time and layer on top of each other. And one of the civil norms in the United States, to tie it into this liberal rage campaign and how this will unquestionably backfire on them, is the United States is a wealthy, prosperous country. We have our problems like anyone else, but we've developed norms over time. One of those norms is you don't walk up to a politician in public, no matter how much you can't stand them, and start screaming with blood coming from your fangs in his face, spittle going all over him, while recording him and telling him what a loser he is. I'm sorry. I have some sincere, as Joe does as well, objections to the policies Democrats have imparted upon us. Very sincere objections. It's hurt my health care. It's hurt my kids' education. But I would never in a million years think to walk up to a politician in the middle of the street and start screaming in his face. I'm sorry. There's nothing remotely palliative about that. It's going to help us as a society heal. Nothing. I don't understand. I don't get what they think they're getting out of this. And once those civil norms disintegrate, everything else goes with it. That's the problem, ladies and gentlemen, I have with this. And that's why I think there's going to be such a backlash at the polls. You get where I'm going with this, Joe?
Yeah, man. And I can feel the backlash brewing already.
People are tired of it. Like, you can't tell me moderate Democrats aren't like, all right, I get it. I don't agree with the DHS secretary over this, but now the woman's not even allowed to eat in a restaurant without 5 or 6 people showing up and screaming in her face. I mean, come on, folks. Give me a break. Seriously. How is this helping? Do what the Tea Party did. Go out there and organize groups of people, go to the polls and win an election, man. Now, I want to give one quick analogy. I want to move on. I'm sorry, but I was just so fascinated by this podcast, and I like to, I like you guys. I'm a thinker. I like to put together various ideas and spontaneously, recombine them into new stuff that I can use on the show. And
well, as soon as you said you don't know why, I knew what you were saying.
Yeah, you don't know why these civil
exactly
norms.
What you were talking about, yeah.
Like the napkins are free. I was a great analogy.
Yeah.
Use it in a podcast. Like, why are napkins free? And I'm like, it's a good question. Why are napkins free?
Yeah.
Because I saw someone take a napkin. Like, I have no idea. But these are just it's not written in the law anywhere, You will all make napkins free. But I'm thinking about this. This is the value. This is also, and I don't mean to get off track. I'm sorry, but I just want you to freewheel with me a little bit today because this is really important stuff. This is what also bothers me about this recent lurch of the left towards socialism. Because what socialism is it disconnects people from free market interchange and interactions. And it's these interactions among free human beings, whether economically, Joe, work-related, whatever they are, that over time develop that archaeological bedrock of society as we know it now that leads you to know in a food court that the napkins are free, but the food isn't. Without those norms that aren't written in stone anywhere, everybody's running behind the counter in a food court and stealing the chicken sandwiches from the Chick-fil-A. I thought this is what we could do. I didn't know. Do you understand how the free market, economic liberty, at the dangers of socialism and the destruction of the free market are the destruction of civil norms as well, because it promotes an individual silo. The government will do everything for you. There's no need for economic relationships. There's no need for contract law, nothing. The government will do and provide everything for you. There's no need to associate with your neighbor. If he has a farm, don't worry. You don't need to negotiate with him to obtain some food for some labor or some trade you may have, whatever, clothing you made. There's no need for that in those interactions. Because the government will in turn take that food and redistribute it, just like it'll take the clothing you make and give it to other people. There's no need, Joe, for voluntary interaction. But it's that voluntary interaction over time and generations that has made the United States this unbelievably prosperous place, because we develop over time through hundreds and thousands and hundreds of thousands of interactions with others, a series of rules and norms that we just understand that we don't need to be told. Socialist countries don't have that because there aren't those interactions, not anywhere to the degree that happens in a free market. There aren't. People are encouraged to stay in silos and suckle off the government for everything. So you don't have those mounds of civil norms that develop over time, what gave us such wealth and prosperity. And here's my final example. I'm sorry, I'm going to move on because it was such a great show. One of the points he makes in the podcast is that big societies, we're very tribal by nature. We were used to existing throughout the course of human history, Joe, in small tribes, where things like collective ideas work. If you're in a tribe of 10 or 15 people, ideas like collectivism and collective labor may work because you can, if your neighbor's not working, you can see it and be like, hey, buddy, you know what? You got to get on a farm and put in a few hours. Yeah. So one of the lines is, we're all free market capitalists when it comes to like the country level, but we're all socialists at the family level, right? The socialist level, because we can control it. And as a parent and a father, you want to control some degree of what your kids do. But the point is, as society expands and becomes bigger, Joe, socialism and collective ideas are impossible to implement because I can't keep control of you. Right. There's 300 million Americans. I have no idea that if I'm paying taxes, that you're actually taking the money to put into your business and then in turn paying taxes yourself into a better collective benefit. As society expands, it becomes impossible to keep tabs on people, number one. And number two, but you need, so that's number one, right? Just to be clear, the downside is as societies expands collectively, it gets impossible for us to monitor our neighbors. So we don't want to act collectively. We want to be like, you know what? You leave me alone, I'll leave you alone. But Kling makes the point in the piece, and Roberts as well, that we need society to expand to be more prosperous because we need specialized labor. So in other words, Joe, we need people to be experts in little things. Like Joe's an expert in this. He understands Adobe Audition and the podcasting. Joe's very specialized in his skill set. But if you live in a small tribal society of only 15 people, if Joe says, hey guys, all I'm going to do is be an expert in podcasting, sound engineering, and Adobe Audition, I got news for you. Everybody's going to starve because they're going to be like, no, Joe, we need you to farm or we're all going to die. So do you see the conflict, Joe? Yeah. Number one, collectivism doesn't work in big groups, so big groups would fail a lot without civil norms. Copy? Point number two, though, is we need groups to expand. We need collective defense. We need specialization of labor, and that's only possible when the group is big enough that Joe can focus on little things while other people focus on other little things so we all don't starve to death. Right. So there's this constant conflict. Big groups don't work, but we need to make big groups work. We make big groups work by civil norms and mounds of them over time where we understand we don't need to go to court for every little thing in the United States. We don't need the food court doesn't take us to court to sue because we took 6 napkins. These have developed over time through hundreds of thousands and hundreds of millions of interactions collectively between people where they understand things over time. And we have a limited government and all of this and contract law, and we understand it. And that is the benefit of free markets over socialism. And I think of this one last example, right? I'm not going to say the country, but I traveled a lot in the Secret Service. And let's just say it was a country that had just found some element of capitalism. Not all. It was still largely state controlled, but you can probably figure it out.
All right.
But I go from one country, it was a multi-country trip. And I was tired, man, really, like seriously tired. I'm on the other side of the world. And I come from a robust, generally free market economy on that side of the world. And I get in the airport and, you get online, you board the plane, nothing happens. I travel to the next country. I'm only there about a week. I will never forget this as long as I live. They had just kind of started to taste free markets. They called the flight number, whatever it was. Flight 762, ready to board. Joe! I've never seen anything like it. No line, no nothing. Mass chaos in this airport. Total, complete, and no concern whatsoever for your feelings. Sir, you just cut me off. The guy looked at me like I had 10 heads. Like, that's what we do. I'm not making this up. I didn't know what to do because I'm a pretty big dude. I'm 6'1". Back then I was probably 200. I'm 231 now. And I'm like, what are we going to do? I'm going to attack someone. So I wound up being like the last person aboard the plane because I just refused to cut anyone off. Folks, I'm not making this up. I think I was, if not the last, I was like the second to last person. There was no line. It was total chaos. And I kept thinking, because I was always fascinated by economics, there it is. In the United States, we have, 50 years plus of flight where people have, in a free market, robust economy, flown hundreds of times. They understand the rules. They don't need to be told. Everybody lines up. You don't cut the guy in front of you. And the folks in this country, they just had no idea. Because it was a socialist country with no economy, no interaction, no human interaction. And the idea was, yes, I'm getting on this plane first. And if I have to jump in front of you and kneecap your butt, I'm going to do it. And nobody did anything about it. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen. It was complete chaos. It was a sea of humanity moving towards this gate.
Man.
Bro, it was the greatest thing ever. I've learned so much from that experience. And I've heard from friends who've been back to the country that things have improved markedly. But again, it's probably because now people there have flown a little bit due to free market interaction, have figured out the napkin rule that you don't cut people off. They don't need to be told it anymore, and order improves, and then society grows and people can interact with each other without having to go to court every single time or having to be arrested or having to be told it. Oh, man. See, that's what we do different in the show. We pull things out of everywhere. All right, I got to move on a little bit here. I got a lot to get to. All right, today's show also brought to you by our buddies at iTarget. Hey, if you haven't checked out this website yet, go check it out. It's itargetpro.com. And the reason I ask you is, listen, I can give you all the testimonials I want about this system. It is a training system for you to improve your proficiency with a firearm. I can talk about it all I want. I can tell you I don't know, Joe, 150, 200 emails I've received about how great this product is. I've already told you all that. I'm not going to repeat that today. Because today I went on the website. It's itargetpro.com. And they have videos on there. And I want you to see the video of how this product works. Just go check it out if you don't believe me. Here's what it is. The iTarget Pro system is a laser round they will send you to put in the firearm you have now. You don't have to make any manipulations. There's no special barrel, special triggers, none of that. So if you have a 9mm handgun, one of the more popular rounds, they will send you a 9mm laser round. You drop in a safely unloaded weapon. Check it twice, check it 3 times for safety. You can't afford to screw that up. You drop the laser round in, and when you depress the trigger on that safely unloaded weapon, because then the laser round has no rim, so it won't eject. You can practice with your firearm all day, and it emits a laser onto a target they send you, so now you know exactly where the rounds would have gone. Dry firing, which is the practice of depressing the trigger on a safely unloaded weapon, is a terrific way to practice, but you have no idea where the rounds would have gone because there's thankfully no round. That's what dry firing is. They will send you a laser round. You will see via the laser where the rounds would have gone. Your groupings will go through the roof. Your accuracy, your precision, you'll be able to practice your sight alignment, sight picture, your trigger pull, your grip, everything in the safety and security of your own home. Go check it out. itargetpro.com. That's the letter I. itargetpro.com. Now, use promo code Dan, my first name, and you'll get 10% off. That's itargetpro.com. Promo code Dan for 10% off. I get a lot of positive feedback on our sponsors. iTarget Pro rocks it. We have more emails, but just go check that website. If you're even remotely unsure about picking it up, watch the video. You're going to be like, I got to get this. It's great. itargetpro.com. Promo code Dan. Okay. I wanted to spend a little time on that because, again, the podcast was so great. And it just goes, it shows you why I'm so furious about leftists who, are so ignorant about the effects of socialism and the actual damage it does to human beings, folks. Remember, people who support socialism aren't engaged in misfeasance. In other words, misfeasance. Someone falls on the, concrete in front of you and you don't help them up. It's a bad act, but you didn't do anything. But you not doing something was the problem. The problem with socialists is they're engaged in malfeasance, meaning the person tries to get up after they fall and you punch them in the face to keep them down. That's what socialism is. And that's how it destroys civil norms. And that's also why I have such a beef with this endless confrontation and harassment and in some cases violent campaign by the left. Once those civil norms disintegrate and conservatives feel like they can't go out in public anymore. Ladies and gentlemen, the country's gone. We become that airport in that country I was talking about where it's complete, total chaos. Let's see. What was the second story? Oh, here we go. I wanted to just cover quickly. Also, I discussed on Friday the bombshell piece by John Solomon in The Hill, the repercussions of which are still reverberating through the media, trying to figure out what to make of it. The Solomon piece in The Hill, which speaks about the FBI's behavior during the Trump investigation in the early stages. There's one particular quote. I know I highlighted on Friday, but I just want to bring it up again because I got a lot of emails on it, and people are unsure what this CI thing means. So here's the quote from the piece. Peter Strzok, remember, who is the number 2 in the counterintelligence division of the FBI and was also the lead investigator on the Hillary case and the Trump case. He sends an email to the number 1 in that division, a guy named Bill Prystep. Prystep's still employed there. Strzok has been escorted out of the FBI complex last week, but is probably still getting paid. I'm not sure if he's on administrative leave or not. Strzok says to Prystep, I suggest we need to exchange our entire lists as we each have potential derogatory CI info, the other doesn't. This is just days after the Trump election. Now, as I brought up Friday, I don't want to repeat the show, obviously. This is critical. Days after the election of Donald Trump, they're talking about exchanging derogatory information they have with each other. Now, as I brought up to you then, and I'll bring up to you again now, how many investigations into Donald Trump are there? Folks, there's another investigation Solomon writes about in his piece called Operation Dragon. How many investigations were going on into Donald Trump? What are we living in, like a third world republic here? Or a pseudo-republic? This is important because I had said on Friday, and a couple folks had emailed me, when he says we each have potential derogatory CI info, the other doesn't. It's clear to me they're talking about separate investigations or separate investigators exchanging information about Trump team members they want to, quote, scrub. I believe the CI info is them talking about spies, confidential informants. Now, the reason I'm bringing it up is over the weekend, because I do read your emails. I'm sorry I don't get to respond to everyone, but I do like to read them. I love your feedback on the show. A couple folks, Joe is like digging into the microphone. As I can always tell when Joe's interested in something.
Yeah, I'm into this. Yeah.
Folks had emailed me, a lot of them with significant law enforcement experience, and they had said, Dan, I think they're talking about counterintelligence investigation information, not confidential informants. Maybe, folks, maybe. In other words, why is this critical? Why does it matter to you? Friday, I'd said to you, if they're talking about exchanging derogatory information, Joe, according to their own email, amongst each other, suggesting there are multiple investigators and potentially multiple investigations working on the Trump team, and the derogatory information is, quote, CI info, and that CI stands for confidential informant. If it does, what does that mean, Joe? Logically, it means that not only are there multiple investigations, there's multiple spies. Yeah. That's what? Now, again, folks had emailed me and said maybe they mean derogatory counterintelligence information. That's possible. Certainly possible. Now, one person emailed me, you know who you are, I'm not going to mention your name, and said, well, I've seen CIs in emails and bureau paperwork referred to as CHSs, confidential human sources. I was not in the FBI. I was in the Secret Service. I'm just telling you on my experience. And again, I'm not trying to correct anyone or be Captain Know-It-All. You may be right. Yeah. They may be talking about counterintelligence information and not spies. I suggested to you on the Friday show, and I'm sticking by my breakdown of this, my analysis of it. But I respect yours. That they are CIs, that they're talking about confidential informants, meaning there may have been multiple spies being run at this Trump team, and the evidence at this point certainly backs that up based on the account of Michael Caputo and Papadopoulos and others who claim that it wasn't only Stefan Halper who contacted them, but others as well with a history of working with the FBI or the CIA. Folks, this is explosive. There were multiple spies. Now, the reason I say that, I'm sticking towards CI, meaning confidential informant, not counterintelligence information, is in my experience, I've always heard to them, even the FBI teams I work with, and I worked with a few of them on a couple big cases, and when I was outside of the New York office in the Secret Service, they always talked about them as CIs. Never anything else. So that's the reason I brought that up, and I appreciate your emails. But if we find out later that, again, they were talking about counterintelligence investigation, it doesn't take the edge off the email, Joe.
Right.
It still means there were probably multiple investigators and therefore multiple investigations into the Trump team, which is a hairy enough thing. But it would, if it means CI and it means confidential informant, it means there were likely multiple spies as well, which is just beyond disturbing. So critical stuff. It's just a phenomenal article. It's in Friday's show notes. If you haven't read it yet, please check it out. All right, today's show also brought to you by our buddies at Brickhouse Nutrition. Thanks to Brickhouse for being with us from the beginning. They have great products out there. I want to tell you about Field of Greens today. A lot of us have problems, especially when we're traveling. I just got back from a road trip. I was out visiting my sister in Oklahoma City. What a beautiful place. That's a really, she lives out in Nichols Hills over there. What a really nice area. But I was out there, when you're on the road, it's tough to get your daily requirement of fruits and vegetables. Now, we all know it is tautological. Every single credible person in the medical field has told you from the day you were born and the day your ears you could process information, you need to eat your fruits and vegetables. But it's tough. You're on the road. You have dried fruits. You carry them with you. No one wants to carry that into the airport. So what do? I take Field of Greens. It is my fruit and vegetable insurance. It tastes delicious. I love it. It's Miles over at Brickhouse Nutrition. They really they blew through the ceiling on nutrition supplements with this. It is real food. It's not extract. This is real high quality fruits and vegetables with all of those beneficial nutrients in there. You take one scoop, you put it in whatever, put it in orange juice, put it in water. I put it in green tea. I put it in V8 sometimes. Big fan of that. And I take 2 scoops of it a day, give it to my kids. It is absolutely terrific. The key to health, good cognition over time, your mental health, your physical health is obviously a sound diet with high quality fruits and vegetables. This is your fruit and vegetable insurance. Go give it a shot. BrickhouseNutrition.com/Dan. Go to brickhousenutrition.com/Dan and pick up a bottle of it today. It's called Field of Greens. Field of Greens. It's available at brickhousenutrition.com/Dan. Go pick up Field of Greens today. You won't regret it. You'll feel better with it. It's terrific stuff. Okay. This was another story over the weekend. I have this report from Forbes, which is great because it proves a point I've been making a long time. And Joe, still stuck in Maryland, is probably very sensitive to this. Joe, you remember the millionaires tax in Maryland?
Yeah.
So there's a great story in Forbes about how California, they did an analysis of the behavior of millionaires in California pre and post the 2012 implementation of a massive millionaire tax in California. Now, the story means a lot to me because again, debating with liberals as I said in the beginning, is almost always an emotion-based argument. It's almost never an argument based on reason and facts. Facts should not be disputable. Facts are facts. That's why they're called facts. I mean, why is this complicated? If you study the behavior of millionaires, the influx of millionaires and the outflux of millionaires from your state, you can make reasonable correlations. There's a difference between correlation and causation. I get that. But you can make reasonable inferences from their behavior pre and post the tax hike if you just look at the data. So the Forbes piece has a really terrific analogy of what happened in 2012, Joe, after California instituted a new higher tax rate for people who made $500,000 and up. Another basically millionaire's tax in some respects, although obviously $500,000 isn't $1 million. But it was meant to tax wealthy people in the state. The influx of people who made that kind of money pre-2012 was positive. After 2012, the influx was an outflux. It was negative. People left. Now, that's not groundbreaking or surprising. No. What is surprising is the left's constant effort to manipulate and change the narrative on these stories because they don't want to accept the fact that tax behavior on people who are producers in society does change and alter behavior. It's also the reason, by the way, the left craves big federal government in their triage of needs more than big state government. Why? I mean, think about it. Why? They hate subsidiarity, rule at the local level. Think about it. It's very simple. Why? If you left tax rates to the most local level possible, Palm City, Florida, here where I live, right? And you don't like the tax rates in Palm City, Florida, which are pretty manageable and good, right? You can leave. You move over to the next town. When the tax rates are federal, or in the case of globalists, global, there's nowhere to escape. The government gets your money no matter where you go. So the left loves this stuff. They don't want the argument ever to turn to tax rates change behavior, and especially relocation and location behavior. They don't want that. So every time studies like this come out about liberal states, their high taxes and people leaving, they run to the defenses right away. Now, the defense in California is, well, it's because housing costs are high. Yeah, housing costs are high, by the way, also because of your liberal zoning policies. But let's not get into that argument. We saw this in Maryland as well. You see it over and over. And I want to talk about Maryland for a second here because it's in the Forbes story that's in the show notes today. I encourage you to read how Martin O'Malley, big lib governor of Maryland, before Larry Hogan, the Republican, got elected over there. He's up for re-election now. Martin O'Malley said, we're going to institute this millionaires tax that's going to take into effect and is we're going to tax people who make $1 million or more. They expected tax revenue from that tax hike, Joe, was about, over $100 million. All
right.
Folks, not only did they not get that $100 million, they lost $100 million because what happened? By the way, they lost $100 million at the higher tax rate. So many millionaires, a third of them, left the state that what they got was less money even at the higher tax rate. That's how many people left. The tax rate was higher on the millionaires, and so many of them left. They raised $100 million less than before the tax rate went into effect. It was that much of a disaster, which meant what? This is what's so infuriating about liberalism again. Who had to pick up the tax burden for Maryland's profligate government spending? The middle class, the rich paid less, not more. Guys, ladies, listen to what I'm telling you, please. I know this is hard for liberals to understand. The wealthy folks you meant to tax to pay their, quote, fair share, paid less money overall. The people who stayed paid more, but the pot of funds available for your redistribution scheme was $100 million less than if you had done nothing. Do you understand the difference between misfeasance and malfeasance? It's not just that they didn't get the money they got before, or it was a break-even scheme. That would just be misfeasance. It was economic, financial malfeasance. They told you they were trying to raise more money for their redistribution schemes and social welfare programs. They destroyed the state's economy by a third of their millionaires, people who were producing jobs and value and tax revenue in the past, leaving. They raised $100 million less, and you got taxed more. None of this is open for dispute at all. None of this. These are facts. You can give your opinion on why those people left. Well, it wasn't the tax rates. It was they had a heavy snowstorm in Severna Park. But I don't care what your logic is, what your logic stream is, what train of logic you use. Those are opinions. The fact is Maryland lost money. Maryland lost millionaires, Maryland lost wealth, and Maryland lost wealth creators after implementing a tax where people left. I don't care what hypothesis you draw up about that. It is irrelevant to the facts on the ground. The exact same thing is happening right now in California. The exact same thing. And of course, Californians who are liberal and their liberal politicians are engaging in the verbal judo again, Joe. Oh, well, Joe, this isn't necessarily because of the tax rate. It's because of the housing. It's because of, I don't know what it's because. There was a shark attack in Northern California. They'll make up any reason. This is what the left does, and you have to be savvy to this. And always when you're debating them, bring it back to the facts and the data that are irrefutable. Wait, I don't want to forget. As you can tell, I'm kind of wired up today and stoked about today's show. So I'm like Joe sees me. I'm like taking notes now because I don't want to forget this. I've been at this a really long time. I'm not one-upping anyone. You all are very skilled at this. But I've been at this debating with the liberal things a very, very long time now. And having grown up in New York and Maryland, I'm pretty darn good at it. I know what they're going to say before they even, finish. The minute they open their mouths, I know where they're going. They will always engage in the euphemism verbal judo game where they switch the argument, they deflect, they use euphemisms like, they're not illegal immigrants, they are undocumented. I mean, this is what they do. They play word games. On this tax argument, they'll do this all the time. They'll dance around, but this is critical. They will get as far away from the facts and data that they can. That is why on the show, I used to always talk about this until people got annoyed, so I don't bring it up anymore. Remember the Reagan tax cuts?
Yes.
I brought it, and the fact that there's no Clinton surplus. I bring these two things up all the time. I used to on the show, and then listeners who were regular listeners in the early days got annoyed about it. It's just funny because it's true. Even conservatives got annoyed about it. Bring up to a liberal to show you how far they'll dance away from facts in a word game thing. That the Reagan tax cuts nearly doubled the amount of revenue that came into the federal government. They will spin this thing 6 different ways from Sunday. No, it wasn't money, it was inflation. No, actually after inflation, it was still significantly more money, even if they're adjusting for inflation. The taxes after Reagan cut the tax. No, it was because of a growing economy. Dude, you just told me a minute ago tax cuts lead to a decrease in tax revenue in the economy. I gave you a fact that's not only not what happened, that tax revenue nearly doubled. When Reagan came into office, it was $500 billion. When he left office, it was $900 billion. You still have yet to dispute that fact. All you're doing is doing verbal judo. Well, it's due to a growing economy. You just said before that tax cuts lead to a decrease in revenue. I'm telling you the facts say you are lying. Can you please address that first before you do your verbal judo game? The same thing with the Clinton surplus. Clinton had a surplus. He didn't. There was no surplus. Just go to the Treasury's own website on. I used to put that article. If you look it up, it's really good. The Myth of the Clinton Surplus. It's a blog post. It's years old. The guy walks through, absolutely falsifies every liberal argument that Clinton ran a surplus everywhere. He even has like a follow-up to it, addressing more liberal nonsense, and liberals will still insist it happened because they can't accept the facts and the data. The same thing happens with these tax cuts. Well, California hiked taxes and a lot of their wealthy people and job producers left. Whoa, let me tell you, here's why I think that really happened. Time out. Did it happen? That's all I want to know. Am I telling you the truth? Because there's a study on it that they did leave. Yes, it happened. Okay, thank you. I'm good. Right, Joe? Moving on. Thank you very much. The rest is your opinion. The rest is your opinion. You're telling me tax cuts don't affect behavior. I'm telling you people behaved a certain way. And you know what that behavior was? They evacuated their butts out of California or liberal states. That is indisputable. Whatever you're going to say after this is exclusively your opinion. That's it. I'm in facts. You're in opinion. Now, there's a reason I brought this up. There's a great piece in the Wall Street Journal. It's a subscription only, but it's about Ivanka Trump, and I think it's a James Freeman piece. It's in the op-ed section today. How Ivanka Trump gave an interview, Joe, and you know how I can't stand fact checkers who are liberal because they're not checking facts. It's almost exclusively opinion they're doing, and they disguise it as fact checking. So Ivanka Trump gives this interview, and she's talking about the expanding economy, and in the interview she states a fact. An indisputable, easily fact-checked, Joe, fact. She says to the interviewer, I think it was Maria Bartiromo, that, hey, the economy's doing well and 2 million people have left the food stamp rolls. Ladies and gentlemen, that is an easily verifiable FACT, fact. Any idiot can go to Google or Bing or any search engine and check it. That is, in fact, true. Fact check, ding, 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 true. Okay? That's a fact. Now, why do I bring this up? Because in the Wall Street Journal piece by Freeman, he hysterically brings up how the Washington Post fact checker gives her 2 Pinocchios for that and says because she made some, and to be fair, she had some opinions in there too, Joe, where she said it may be due to this or due to that. Now, I think it's obviously due to the growing economy. But what does the fact checker do? Instead of checking the fact in there, and the only fact she gave was the 2 million people coming off the food stamp rolls. A fact checker is supposed to check the facts. They're not opinion checkers. What do? They give her 2 Pinocchios saying, well, she's giving her opinion about what those reasons may be. There's a fact in there. You guys are fact checkers. You had one job, to check facts. Instead, they give her 2 Pinocchios, despite the fact that the only fact she put out in the piece was, in fact, a fact and correct. Don't ever trust these fact checkers. They are scams. The Washington Post, these Pinocchio things, Snopes, it's a big liberal scam. It's a joke. Don't throw these things right out. Anytime a liberal opens their mouth, he says, well, I checked it on Snopes, or I went to a fact check, like one final point, like PolitiFact or something. Just start laughing immediately. Go, PolitiFact? Oh, you thought they were fact checkers? Because they don't check facts. They check opinions. That's what they did to Ivanka Trump. They checked her opinion, not the actual fact. Do you see the scam, Joe? They avoided the fact and jumped to the opinion in a way to make her out to be a liar. And if you don't believe me, read the Myth of the Clinton Surplus piece about it. You will be entirely educated about how there was never a Clinton surplus. And then read the PolitiFact piece. I think he links to it in there. That tries to, again, confirm that there was a Clinton surplus, despite the fact that it is categorically false. And you'll see why places like PolitiFact are a complete scam. It's a joke. All right, folks, thanks again for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Hey, the Chum Store is open on the website. Go pick up some Dan Bongino gear if you see fit. We have some shirts and some mugs and stuff. We're going to be adding some new stuff, but go check it out. It's open for you all. We appreciate it. And make sure you subscribe to the show. If you wouldn't mind, go to iTunes or iHeart. You hit subscribe or follow or SoundCloud. It helps us a lot, folks. I know a lot of you download the program, but the subscriptions move us up the chart. We are actually number 8 today in news and politics. You understand how great that is? Thanks to you. 8 out of 2 million plus podcasts, probably more on iTunes. We're number 8 in news and politics, thanks to you. So we really, really appreciate that. Thank you so much. All right, folks. I'll see you all tomorrow. Thanks again.
You just heard The Dan Bongino Show. Get more of Dan online anytime at conservativereview.com. You can also get Dan's podcasts on iTunes or SoundCloud. And follow Dan on Twitter 24/7 at DBongino.
mainstream media, government cover-ups. You want to stop tyranny? Well, so does he. Live from the Infowars.com studios, it's Alex Jones.
Breaking news alert. There's almost no coverage of this, even though it came out an hour ago in the Chicago Tribune. Trump pardons ranchers, the Hammonds, in case that inspired 2016 occupation of National Wildlife Refuge in Oregon. Amazing. Trump's also set to go to England, where the Islamicist mayor, Sadiq Khan, has openly been calling for Trump to be blocked from the country. Simply amazing. Meanwhile, with the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh, we witness ABC News and others calling him a extreme candidate, calling the controversial candidate before his name had even been announced. Women's March also has been mocked for calling Supreme Court nominee XX an extremist in pre-written statement. So they just said whoever it was, they're extreme. Quite frankly, if anything, Kavanaugh is a mainline Bushite-type conservative who Trump sees as safe to get in. And I trust the president so much, and he hasn't proven us wrong yet, that even though I don't like the connection to Karl Rove, I don't like the connection to Never Trumpers, the man does have a pretty good conservative voting record as a jurist. And getting to see him up on the stage last night, he seemed pretty genuine, and he and Trump seem to have good chemistry, and that's a lot of what Trump works with as well. So we'll see what happens. Barrett, I think, would have been better for so many reasons. More conservative, more Christian, at least in her actions, demonized for that. And you've got Feinstein saying the dogma of Christianity is strong in you. The dark side is strong with you. So channeling Yoda, it's an amazing time to be alive, obviously. We're going to be looking at the Hammond case. For those that forget, there's a thing called controlled burns. And everybody does it from upstate New York to Georgia to Florida to New Mexico to Texas to Illinois to Oregon. And the Forest Service under Obama started saying you got to get permits for those, and then they wouldn't issue them. And so these brothers did some controlled burns right on their property line as a fire break, because the Park Service is famous for not clearing that out now. And then there's a fire, it builds up superheat and comes onto your land. And a little bit of it, like a half acre or something, in the controlled burn, burns some forest bottom area, burns some grass. And they put them in prison for it and called it arson. So anybody that's lived in Texas, every year after the summer's over, the Mexicans burn their fields to put nitrogen back into it. It's what every culture's done for thousands of years. And there's a lot of smoke in the sky sometimes. Sometimes it makes you cough. Sometimes, makes the sunsets incredibly beautiful. Are we going to arrest all the Mexicans for doing it? It's what you do. But beyond that, it's a fire break. So Trump has pardoned ranchers whose arrest led to armed occupation of wildlife refuge. He has not pardoned the Bundys yet, but they've been winning their court cases, but have been through living hell. And obviously got set up by some informants and others, but that has just been a real nightmare. And we saw journalists like Pete Santilli, who I don't think broke any laws, being thrown in prison for years, and then finally being able to get out. It's been a bad situation. And then to have paramilitary there with the FBI shoot an unarmed man, Mr. Finnegan, it's been quite the devilish fiasco and could have sparked a new Waco-type siege, but thank God that got de-escalated, and Trump's trying to get the Forest Service and the Park Service, the BLM, really is what we're talking about, to stop acting like Soviet thugs. So that's all coming up today, plus the big Brexit fight heating up as Theresa May tries to betray the voters of the UK. It is a big broadcast. Infowars.com, newswars.com. Tomorrow's News Today. We'll be right back on the other side of this quick break. Please spread all the live links and more. Ladies and gentlemen, we are live broadcasting worldwide. I am your host, Alex Jones, and Trump has just pardoned the Hammond brothers the foresters and cattle ranchers in Oregon who did a controlled, legal, and lawful burn right along their property line with the U.S. Forest Service, quote, property. And because a small amount of land burned, a little bit of grass and undercover foliage under the trees, they were sentenced to a long prison sentence, sparking the outrage and the standoff that then developed. I think it's a very, very good move. You could argue that a pardon of the Bundys would only spark more people to have armed confrontations, but you cannot argue that this was a very good pardon. That said, I think the Bundys should be pardoned because the feds came and took their land. They took their cattle to starve them to death and then lied to the media and says it wasn't their land because the public didn't understand surface rights versus who has the actual title to it. But when you're there since 1877 and you have the grazing rights, those are the rights, and you just can't take them. There were hundreds of families there. Now there is one family there. We don't need more people run off the land in this UN rewilding program of UNESCO. George Herbert Walker Bush in 1992 signed us on to that thing. Put our schools, our immigration program, our land use, everything under the UN. And people would say, oh, the crazy conspiracy theorists, they say we're under the UN. Because we were. Remember what Trump did last year? He said the UN no longer runs our refugee program. We're going to decide who comes in via ICE and via the Constitution. And I'm recapturing the power the president has under the Constitution. And, of course, the Supreme Court unanimously, years later, said it was right. Because the president has that power. It's in the Constitution. A 5-year-old could read that and understand it. How had it been transferred to the UN? The UN would say who can come in. The UN would vet the people. And, of course, they weren't vetting them. Who runs the refugee program in Europe? The UN. If an international unelected body can tell you who you take in and how your borders are operating, you are under global government. And they will use those third world populations as weapons. So I bring that up to remind folks that the UN with the EU, as we speak, is telling Europe that they are bringing in the United Nations. The EU is bringing in the United Nations to establish, quote, refugee centers. Those are invasion centers. And the EU is now creating a navy to block Italy from blocking George Soros chartered ships coming in out of Africa daily with thousands. Well, guess what? That just made Italy start to vote to leave the EU. Oh, but here's the problem. There's a permanent bureaucracy. And just as Italy never voted to enter the unelected EU, and just as the UK never voted to do it, even though they voted for Brexit 2 years ago, Theresa May, and that's coming up, a Paul Joseph Watson report at the bottom of the hour, tried to sign a deal unilaterally, putting them back in the EU. But see, people say, well, if we vote to leave or we vote to get out of these criminal programs, why they just keep coming back. But then people are awake. And instead of denying we're under the UN and denying we're under world government, when you get a real president or you get a real party like UKIP and you get real movements in Europe pointing out that no one ever voted to enter this and the EU bureaucracy is permanent and the parliament is ceremonial, and then the EU bureaucrats, all 100 and something thousand of them, voted to give themselves diplomatic immunity a decade ago and tax exemption from the EU-wide raft of taxes like VAT and others. I mean, you can't float that and get away with it. What have I said thousands of times? If you expose the authoritarian nature of the global government, EU, UN, IMF, World Bank, Global Combine, set up by the Rockefellers just 70 years ago, if you look at it, it's totally, flagrantly illegal. It's flagrantly tyrannical. It's just naked. It's prima facie. On its face, it is total corporate world government by stealth. And you ask, well, how do we defeat that? Because they've got all the money. They swindled it all, of course. And every tech owner, like Bezos and all of them, Cook, all of them, worth hundreds of billions apiece, control trillions, are the most ruthless monsters with slave factories and forced abortions and the daycare at Foxconn in China. People chain their kids up and they crap on the street. I'm not kidding. Look it up. No environmental standards, no nothing. And then they put more standards on us than anybody else so that we can't operate. And Trump's like, we're not doing this anymore. And here's the other breaking news. The Hill is reporting lawmakers target Chinese security companies over spy fears. Congress is now investigating the fact that most major Chinese companies are run by members of Chinese intelligence, that our major universities have openly been taken over by them, that they've done the Office of Personnel Management hack, that Obama gave them all the codes. The realization that we've been totally infiltrated by the Red Chinese military, and that they brag about it, and that they have put bases all over the world under the guise of factories and mines, and that they are intending to cut the U.S. off economically and militarily, and that our own so-called elites 100% took China from when they didn't have running water in 99% of the country, and people wiped their rear ends with their hands, and let Mao kill 80-something million people to get them in line, take them in, line them up as slaves, and then total Western investment to leverage out the planet. China was wood-burning stoves and no toilet paper 60 years ago. Now it's got more roads, more industry than the United States has. We have been totally rooked, screwed over, absolutely, militarily, through economics, destroyed. Look at the headline right here. It's on DrudgeReport.com. It's also up on Infowars.com. And it deals with new record trade deficit with China. Trump is just trying to put a tourniquet on our leg that's been chopped off at the knee. For 50 years, the blood's been spraying out, and finally it was just kind of barely coming out. Really almost no need for a tourniquet, except we're doing blood transfusions right now. That's what Trump's doing. He's got the country off life support, blood transfusions, trying to get us to eat our first meal, trying to get some color back in our skin, and trying to get us up and positive and realizing we're in a fight. Because they use our open, free society, traders in our own government, multinational banks, to bring the United States down at the end of World War II. They said, the U.S. dominates the planet. It's got half the wealth. It's got everything. It's promoting freedom worldwide. We can't have that. Let's promote a form of corporate communism, and let's prop China up in a big master plan to do it. And so all of you Antifa people already are Maoist. Go to their meetings. They know it. All you Democrats, though, that hate Trump and hate America and hate Infowars.com and hate Newswars.com, you're just complete fools. All we're trying to do is go back to what works and what's successful and what's honorable. We're going to have the latest on the new Supreme Court nominee, Brett Kavanaugh, Trump's pardon, so much more coming up. The left panicking and freaking out and rioting and attacking people all over the place, foaming at the mouth viciously, just saying they're going to surround the Capitol and stop Kavanaugh being approved. I mean, it's an amazing time. But America is fighting back for its life and starting to win, praise God. Nowhere. Except for a tiny 1/10 of 1% that always gets total power. So I'm going to just keep on walking with the truth and with history on my side. All over you tyrants. Get used to it.
You keep playing where you shouldn't be playing.
A prime example of that, which is some really good unintentional humor. Pelosi, Dems must win midterms to preserve civilization. as everyone runs from blue cities and blue states all over the world. I know it's a red-blue dichotomy the media came up with decades ago for their map boards during elections, but if you look globally and call, it's kind of upside-down world, but call free market countries red and socialist or communist countries blue, even though communist color is red, everyone's running from the blue towards the red, aren't they? But then the left always tells you they are civilization. There's always propaganda about spaceships and science and everything, but they can't do anything. They can't get their act together. And as the economy comes roaring back, they now admit they're trying to sabotage it to stop Trump. So I'm going to go over some of the amazing economic numbers here in just a moment, but also look at the poison lining to this if we don't long-term and even in the midterm fix things. But this is Trump walking all over them with Brett Kavanaugh. Here he is making the announcement last night.
Tonight, it is my honor and privilege to announce that I will nominate Judge Brett Kavanaugh to the United States Supreme Court. Judge Kavanaugh has impeccable credentials, unsurpassed qualifications, and a proven commitment to equal justice under the law. The Supreme Court is entrusted with the safeguard of the crown jewel of our republic, the Constitution of the United States. The rule of law is our nation's proud heritage. It is the cornerstone of our freedom. It is what guarantees equal justice. And the Senate now has the chance to protect this glorious heritage by sending Judge Brett Kavanaugh to the United States Supreme Court.
People are asking me what I think of this. I'm usually right, and a lot of insiders thought that Kavanaugh was out because of Rand Paul and because of the Bush connections, but his voting record's actually pretty conservative, and Trump likes him, and Trump knows other people that know him, and he is well-suited to probably win confirmation. The problem is, and I'm going to get into this right now, the Democrats have announced their plan. It hasn't gotten a lot of traction yet, but they've announced their plan to try to block him. And their argument is, we're going to block everybody because Trump is under investigation. And so, therefore, it's a conflict of interest if he puts a Supreme Court justice in who might then sit over judgment of him. Well, by that extension, he couldn't have the last guy either. If you know about separation of powers, that's how you balance this out. No, the president does get his Supreme Court nominees. He does get to pick them. He does get to put them forward. And then when they get in, they will sit in judgment. That's how it works. You just can't have the legislative over the executive or the executive over the legislative or the judicial over. It's separate but equal clause. And it's very, very clear. But now they're playing this game. Politico has an article out. What Trump's Supreme Court pick means for the Russia probe. And you've got these different congressmen, different senators like Cory Booker saying President Trump is currently a subject of an ongoing criminal investigation. And any nomination of a Supreme Court justice while the investigation continues is unacceptable because of the clear conflicts. You just can't have anybody now, see? You're trying to sell that idea of interest inherent in the president installing someone. No, they're approved by Congress, who could be vote on the number of potential issues from the investigation that could come before the court, Senator Cory Booker said in a statement opposing Kavanaugh's nomination. Now, where's the inherent fraud there? Because it's Supreme Court justices appointed by Democrats that sit over Democrats. That's how the separation of powers works, so one group doesn't get full control and overthrow the whole system, which is what the Democrats have been trying to do for decades. And globalism is a world system to overturn nation states, period. They're the traitors that hate America. They hate flyover country. They hate the bitter clingers. They hate the Second Amendment. They hate the Christians. They've declared their hatred of this country. They've declared their hatred of this country's economy. They are the clear and present danger. They're the enemy. And if anything, Kavanaugh's association with the Republican establishment means he might not be trustworthy for Trump. But Trump has done nothing. He's our president. He could go sign any deal he wanted with Russia because he's the president. Then, if Congress thought it was bad and thought it had political support of the people, they could impeach him for it. But he can do whatever he wants. There's no prior restraint. That's why putting the president in is very important and a sacred duty when you're the big global empire. But see, the globalists have had us build the empire, and now they wanted to remove America from the equation, controlling the empire. So Trump's going to meet Theresa May coming up here in just a few days. That's going to be a circus. He's been meeting with Putin, and Trump has found his sea legs. He's winning on every front, and the globalists are panicking and don't know what to do, and it's a beautiful time to be alive right now. But when we come back, I'm going to play some more of these clips. I've got Paul Watson's report on the attempts to keep the UK in the EU with no vote. In fact, countermanding another vote. But what I'm saying about Trump is this. The will of the people are behind him. And so when he made the joke, I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and my supporters would still support me, he gets the fact that he's going to deliver to us, we're going to deliver to him. And that's why I'm so behind the president, because we're taking the country and the world back, and the globalists are crapping their pants, and things are turning around, so praise God's all I got to say. Doesn't mean things are perfect, but in my gut, I know Trump's good as well. Here's why I'm so pro-Trump. Here's why I endorsed him for president early on. Because I can smell fate. I can see future paths that I want to follow, that I want my family to be part of. That's what a leader is. Now, the globalists hate Trump. They hate nationalist movements. They hate free market because they've already gotten control of the planet's wealth, and they don't want you to have any wealth because they want total power over you. Total control. And Trump has been deftly guiding this country back from the brink. And when you look at how the communist Chinese, even in the Washington Post, they admit, have taken over America's top 50 public schools with just billions coming in and directly setting up endowments, taking control. And our government stood by and let them do it because it was part of a master plan. Oh, here's the Panama Canal. Here's all the major deep water ports. Here's all our missile secrets. And then they put their Army officers and their Air Force officers and their Navy officers into the schools. Have been doing it for decades to be students, and then they end up being the heads of the schools, the heads of the science programs. And it's in the Hill newspaper today that Congress is having hearings on this. Lawmakers target Chinese security companies over spy fears. We have been sold out. This was the next world war. This was the global corporate war to bring down Europe, bring down the United Kingdom using the EU. This is the stealth program. And it's admitted, and it's diabolical, and it's insane, but it happened. And so all of you that hate Trump and hate America, while you've never been to China, you've never been to Venezuela, you've never studied it, you have no idea what I'm even talking about, you just hate Trump because he's a Nazi. Because late night TV said so 500 times. And what you've got is a bunch of spoiled, rotten, brainwashed, sniveling trendies who have this whole birthright right in front of them, and they want to just crap it away because in some feeble area of their mind, they think they're on this big international, global, intellectual team because their high school teachers and their college professors patted them on the head and said, you're good. Look, Hollywood and mainstream media and the Chi-Coms and the unelected EU and the Islamicist mayors, they all said, oh, you're so smart. Let's launch a big, fat Trump baby balloon. And then have the media report on it 10 million times and celebrate it in some stupid ritual. When that baby with the clothespin diaper on just beat your whole global system, rallying humanity, and the West is coming back, and that's all you've got to offer, that won't bother Trump. He loves going to the correspondents' dinner before he got elected president, having them call him a loser and saying you'll never be president and you're a piece of garbage. Because Trump knew he who laughs last wins. Because he has an internal compass, just like I do, and just like our listeners do, where we're not governed by peer pressure. We're not governed by the winds of propaganda. We're governed by our inner rudder, our compass. And it's what drives us, what we know is right, what we know is true, integrity. And by the way, with integrity comes incredible wealth, incredible success, incredible power. The problem is, you ever experienced family or neighbors that don't really have a job, but boy, they sure want to tell you how to run your life. They sure want to tell you what to do with your car. They sure want to tell you how you should live because they don't have a life. They want to run your life. And they think calling us names, lying about us, pouring coffee on us, and screaming at us does something. Yes, it does something. It lets me know I'm right about how immature and stupid and thuggish and mob mentality you people are. And it means nothing to me what you do and what you say. When I was in Seattle, they'd always run by and call me a Nazi or call me a name. So I'd wave them over and say, tell me what you have to say. Tell me your intellectual ideas. And their answer would be to throw coffee on me and run away. And even when I offered the goblin, as we call him, $10,000 and first-class tickets to come here, he wouldn't do it. When we upped it to $20,000, it turns out he is an out-of-work, wannabe professional wrestler announcer. It turns out that the goblin cannot and will not debate. And neither can his Brian Stelter-style teeth. It's like he crossed Brian Stelter and Mr. Ed and then threw in Gollum with a genetic chimera. And then out popped this guy. And I'm not trying to be mean. It's just, what is it about minions of this system that make them so horrific to look at? Okay, I got to stop. I really want to play this Brexit report when we come back to the next segment. And we've got Mark Randazzo, one of the top First Amendment lawyers in the country. And he's going to be in studio with us. We also have the gentleman who started the Walk Away movement, who's liberal and gay and lives in New York, who got thrown out of an electronics shop. They said, oh, you're alt-right because you're on Tucker Carlson. Get out of here. I won't sell you the microphone. He's going to be joining us. And then Paul Watson and a lot more. Roger Stone's will be popping in. He wants to, and I want to get his take, a comment on the pardon of the Hammonds who didn't engage in arson, as the BLM lied and said under Obama. They did a controlled burn, something that everybody does who understands that you've got to have fire breaks And so they call that arson and put them in prison for that. So that is a big deal coming up. Before I go any further, we are going to have some big announcements tomorrow and some new specials. We have something very, 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 very exciting coming out that deals with wound care and disinfecting infections and trying to block that and stop that. That's really revolutionary. We're going to be announcing tomorrow some other things. But the big 4th of July super sale, Second American Revolution sale that we launched last week, this is the last day. This is the last day. The Second American Revolution 4th of July super sale. Big savings at InfoWarsStore.com and your chance to help fund, again, the Second American Revolution and block Soros and the globalist attacks. Brain Force, the amazing nootropic, 50% off. Find out why people love it and why that's 5-star reviews by the thousands at Power Reviews. Brain Force Plus, 50% off with free shipping. Survival Shield X2, 40% off, free shipping, low stock. Knockout Sleep Aid, 50% off. All supplies last. And a lot of these are about to sell out, so it's a good thing that I am ending the special. Real Red Pill Plus, now with energy, free shipping, 50% off. And so much more at InfoWarsStore.com. That's the big umbrella site. InfoWarsLife.com takes you right to the subpage. And you also get 10% off when you sign up for auto ship on things you want to reorder. We have the fluoride-free toothpaste, Super Blue for adults and children. It's all there and a lot more. 50% off on hundreds of items and free shipping. InfoWarsStore.com. Be sure and check it out today. Well, the minions of the establishment, the zombies that follow Hollywood mainstream media, I guess you call them the suckers, the weak-minded people, are physically attacking people, running people out of stores, rioting, screaming, freaking out all over the country. There's so many reports of it, I can't even keep track of it. A lot of it's up on Infowars.com. Antifa's just beating up anybody that's got a bumper sticker that's Christian on their cars. There's so much of this pouring in. We've got 3 new videos of them just beating up old women. And let me tell you something. I see like 15 young punks beating up a 65, 70-year-old woman, and I'm going to be honest. I just start wanting to kill people. I mean, I just, as a man, I can't watch that stuff because it makes me angry at everybody around me. I'm not trying to sound like a tough guy either, man. How do you come up with grown men beating up old women? I mean, that's why I cannot get around this stuff. This country has produced so much good, but it's also produced a bunch of spoiled, rotten scum that is the lowest filth on the earth. I mean, I would just love to see each one of these punks put in a ring with a patriot. Just stop showing it to me. That's just one of the videos. I can't look at it. But I've seen it myself where they'll target an old dude on crutches or an old lady on a wheelchair. Just like radical Islamists, you see the videos where they'll kick women downstairs and stuff. It's just... They are so dishonorable. They are so cowardly. They are so weak that it's hard to believe that there is scum like this and that it exists, but it does exist. And it is a creation, a dropping of the Nancy Pelosi's, of Hillary, of the San Franciscos, of the Seattles, of Austin. Much of Austin has fallen to it. I've not evacuated, but my God, it is a product of loathsome evil that must be met head on. But I ask men out there, I mean, if you watch grown men run up and a woman beg them and say free speech, and they smack her in the face, and the police do nothing, of course. There's always these weird little pot-bellied Nelly police in San Francisco with little, that smile when they see it. It's like, what planet did you come from? Because you don't act like people. Now, we're going to Roger Stone right now. I'll get to the Paul Watson Big Brexit news at the start of the next hour because I want to get into the pardon and obviously what's behind these things. The president exercising executive power. People haven't been doing that except exercising it for the globalist. Now it's being exercised for America, and I love it. But Clifford Cunningham's written an article Napolitano says Kavanaugh, heart and soul of the establishment, and that he's disappointed, and that Justice Gorsuch was a good pick and was honorable. And I respect Andrew Napolitano, and of course, one of the best friends of Roger Stone. And I had one of the editors walk in and said, "Do you want to publish this?" And they normally only ask me something if it's something you get sued for it, and I might have lawyers review it. But I said, of course, publish it. I like Clifford Cunningham. He works for us. And I said, I want to hear what Napolitano has to say. We're going to show both sides. We're not in a cult here. But here is my view, and then we'll go to Roger Stone. If Trump can co-opt the establishment, then I'm all for it. We want them to surrender. And one way to do that is to bring them in and then see if they'll be honorable. If not, you throw them overboard. That's what Trump does. With the Supreme Court pick, though, this guy will be there 30, 40 years. He's pretty young. You can't do that. And so that's why it's a big deal. So the left doesn't want him. They're going to oppose anybody saying the president's under investigation, so conflict of interest, totally unconstitutional to say that. It's just made up, but that's going to be their big push when they surround the Capitol and, they're calling for a civil insurrection. But I know this. I've seen the president so many times come through that I trust him. And I didn't want Kavanaugh. Roger didn't want him. Senator Paul said he was probably going to vote against him. Now he says he's open, which means there's been some behind-the-scenes discussion. Has Kavanaugh pledged himself to the Republic? Has he explained, hey, I just came up through the system and Harvard and Yale. Okay, I'm a white shoe boy, but I'll probably get confirmed. And he's got a pretty good voting record. He's got a few problems on civil liberties. So that's my view, is that the president isn't God. He can't do everything. He knows a lot of things we don't know. The globalists absolutely hate him. We need to get this confirmation before the midterms in case they steal those, and they're going to try to impeach the president. And they're going to make a big move in the Supreme Court. So I see what the president is doing. Sometimes he's proven right. Sometimes he's proven wrong. Most of the time he's proven right. Roger Stone, what do you think?
Well, I agree with you, Alex. He was not my choice. I'm not saying that he is not a conservative. He is. But at the same time, his deep ties to the establishment and to the Bush family were troubling to me. Whether or not his involvement as a young prosecutor in the Vince Foster case, the Clintons' lawyer who was, died in office, it comes up in his confirmations, remains to be seen. The left would have opposed anybody Trump appointed. They had their fill-in-the-blank signs already painted. So they would have been just as
By the way, there's actual video. They had all the signs of all four potentials printed up, and then ABC News beforehand said controversial nominee before it was even announced.
Yeah, so they were locked and loaded regardless of where the president went. Let's see how this goes. The left is also claiming that the president wanted Kavanaugh because he thinks there's going to be a showdown in the Supreme Court over the investigation by Robert Mueller and whether or not the president can be subpoenaed to give a deposition, perhaps even broader issues. I don't know that that's the case, but that is the narrative being spun by the left.
Oh, they're now saying he's not allowed to have any nominees that the previous one that he got in is bad. I mean, of course, it's not in the Constitution. It's not true. There's separate but equal powers. But that is going to be their new push that Senator Booker and others are pushing, is that Trump just has to be shut down, his whole agenda, because he's under investigation by their little crackpot, Mueller, who's been totally exposed.
Yeah, it's really kind of extraordinary. Clearly, these people have never read the U.S. Constitution. The president has the authority to make these appointments, and he should do so on a timely basis. You can see that Ruth Bader Ginsburg is holding on to see whether the Democrats win the Senate this November. She's hanging on by a thread. So everything the Democrats say now is colored by their growing hysteria over the popularity and success of the president. The growing economy really has them spooked because it gives the president the upper hand.
And that was my next point, and we'll cover it some when we come back here in a few minutes. Pelosi, Dems must win midterms to preserve civilization, but everyone's running from blue cities, blue states, and socialist and communist countries. Texas is CNBC's top state for business in America this year. The coming labor shortage in America is great for news for workers, with wages rising rapidly without a communist minimum wage, which bankrupts things. Lowest ever Hispanic unemployment ignored by Univision, Telemundo, and it just continues, ladies and gentlemen. Homeowners are sitting on a record amount of cash and not tapping in, and it just continues, ladies and gentlemen. The only areas being hurt are retailers and things because, obviously, we have a situation with Amazon and the rest of it. We're going to go to break here in just a moment with Roger Stone and come back and talk about that, but we can't be too confident because they're planning a lot of nastiness. We'll talk about how they're planning to keep the president from getting this nominee through the approval process in the Senate. And we'll also look at this latest pardon and why he did it, but also the larger strategy of why Trump is engaging in all of these pardons early in his presidency, which really is unprecedented and I think a great idea, but we'll explore all that. Don't forget, today is the last day for the extended July 4th week mega sales. We've got hundreds of items, 50% off. Some we can't do because 50% off would be below what they cost us, like X2. It's 40% off with free shipping. Free shipping at InfoWarsStore.com on any item, whether it's a $9.95 bottle of colloidal silver, normally $19.95, and free shipping. You also get 10% off when you sign up for auto ship on things you're going to want to reorder, like Wake Up America coffee or X2 or Super Blue toothpaste. And it is you funding this operation that's changed the world. So thank you all for shopping at InfoWarsStore.com. And while you're there, get a copy of Roger Stone's newest book, Stone's Rules. Read it, and then donate to the library to reach other people. That's how we win the war, one mind at a time.
Is hanging by a thread after Brexit Secretary David Davis and Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson resigned. So why did they resign? Because Theresa May brazenly betrayed Brexit by proposing a deal with the EU that would de facto keep the UK in the customs union, subjecting us to the same regulatory and legal framework that we voted to leave, and hampering us from doing trade deals with other countries that would provide us with economic independence and prosperity. The very reason why we voted for Brexit in the first place. Correct me if I'm wrong, but when I went to vote in the referendum, I didn't see a third option that said leave, sign up to everything under a different name, and be the EU's bitch. To illustrate how... All
right, this critical report is coming up. I just wanted to show you the start of it to, again, encourage everybody to go to Infowars.com, to go to newswars.com and get the video and get it out there, because the fact that they're trying to ignore the vote of the people of the UK to get out of the EU, something that they never voted to do to begin with, is illustrative of how authoritarian it is, just like they're trying to overthrow our elected president. That's the theme here, because that's what they're doing. Going back to Roger Stone, Roger, any other points on Kavanaugh and where you see this going? And then let's shift gears into, as I was just mentioning, the latest pardon.
Yeah, just a final point on Kavanaugh. It's instructive that Kavanaugh was a clerk for Justice Kennedy. So it's conceivable that one of the reasons they were able to get Kennedy to step down was because he would be replaced by one of his clerks. I would point out that Justice Neil Gorsuch was also a clerk to Judge Kennedy. Now, as a Supreme Court justice, even though he is retired, Kennedy gets an office in the Supreme Court. He gets to hang around, and he would have two of his former clerks on the court. Perhaps it was sold to him that way. The big news today, Alex, as you point out, I was headed to Las Vegas this weekend, where I was scheduled to speak to a rally on Sunday to free the Hammonds. The Hammonds are embattled Oregon ranchers who ran afoul of the Office of Land Management and were imprisoned for impossibly long sentences. They have now been pardoned by the president in a blockbuster move. So the rally that I was scheduled to speak to has been canceled, happily. This demonstrates that the president understands how to use the pardon not only to deliver justice for people who deserve it. Dwight Hammond is 79 years old. Stephen Hammond is 49. The evidence against them at trial was exceedingly weak. the judge, the Justice Department demanded a maximum 5-year sentence for them, wasn't even clear that they were guilty of setting a fire that they were accused of setting. So the president also understands the symbolic nature of these pardons for the West, for the rugged individual West. This is a very clear sign that the president will stand up to the federal machinery that's been grinding these ranchers and farmers, under their boot for many years.
I have been out west, and you talk about jackboot thugs. The way BLM behaves to just the general public, the way they glare at people at the trade stations, the way they act is very imperious, very arrogant, like an occupying army. And for folks that don't know, and let's come back and do a few more minutes on this. This is so critical. Some states like Nevada are 90% federal. There are several others that are 75, 80%, but most of those western states are more than half federal. And now they're always squeezing everybody off the land, working with the UN, working with the Nature Conservancy, working with these groups. And then they take people's farms and stuff, and years later, rich guys come and build a mansion on it. It is very Byzantine. It's very, I would almost call it dark age, what's going on. And there is a war by the corrupt federal government against the West, and Trump has signaled an end to that. We'll be right back with Roger Stone straight ahead. Roger Stone was just getting into the optics, the iconography of President Trump this morning, announcing that he is pardoning 2 members of the Hammond family who had done some controlled burns before that are totally normal on your own land. There was another controlled burn. This goes on all over the country, and they couldn't even prove it was them. They tried to call it arson. Had a kangaroo group put him in jail, sparked a lot of outrage. I mean, you've got illegal aliens killing people every day, stabbing them and shooting them, and they don't even go to jail, or killing an FBI agent, a $280 fine. Meanwhile, a fire that hurts nobody, that burned some grass. You're going to go to jail for 5 years, and then it's almost sparked a huge uprising in the West. Recap what you were saying about how they've been squeezing the West, how under Obama and even Bush and Clinton, they've taken so much more land, how they treat people on their own land, how they try to block roads so you can get to your land. I mean, there's a rewilding going on under UNESCO and the treaty that George Herbert Walker Bush signed.
Well, and the most egregious example of this, of course, was the Bundy family of Nevada. The claim that the Bundys hadn't paid their rent, in essence, to the government is false. They attempted to pay their rent to the county because they believed the land belonged to the state, not the federal government. The government's misconduct in the Bundy case was so egregious, was so outrageous, that the judge threw the case out, and then it was announced last week that they will not be retried. I flew out there for a rally for freedom for the Bundys several months ago, and the energy was quite extraordinary. So the Hammonds are in a very similar situation, sympathetic to the Bundys, but the ranchers and the farmers of the West are tired of these jackbooted thugs who work for the Bureau of Land Management. Where does it say that they get their own police department, their own paramilitary organization? The facts here were clear to the president. He didn't have to pardon the Bundys. All I think he would have. In the end, the judge threw out those charges, so a pardon became unnecessary. In this case, he has done the valiant and right thing by pardoning the Hammonds.
And it just shows what heroes the Bundys and others have been. And David Knight was there in the middle of it with our crew. Just an amazing historic event. And then the persecution they went through, then the vindication by the judge. There's something new in the wind out there. People are sick of producers being harassed and targeted and treated like criminals, and then criminals being held up like they're gods. Roger Stone, we were talking, we only have a minute left before I go to this Paul Watson report, about the fact that the White House doesn't deny report Trump made secret deal with Kennedy over retirement replacement. Well, let's think progress. I mean, they just didn't respond to it. But you know, the whole point is, if Kennedy's leaving, and they end up putting his old law clerk in there, that would make sense. It's not illegal of how Trump makes deals to get things done.
Think Progress is the single least reliable fake news site anywhere on the internet. Anything they write is false. They cannot be taken seriously in any way. My point earlier was one of simple speculation. I don't know that happened, but if it did, it would not be illegal. If the president told Justice Kennedy that he would consider his former clerk, Brett Kavanaugh, who everyone agrees is qualified, that would not be in the slightest bit inappropriate. But Chuck Schumer is now openly saying Kavanaugh was appointed to thwart the Mueller investigation. So there we have it. You see the Democratic line of the day.
Well, that's what I came out with this morning. That's one of the headlines, is that the Democrats have announced their plan to block all judicial nominations, basically, of the president. If there's any chance that any of the cases against him could ever be heard by any judge he puts in, that's just an insane idea. It's the executive branch. That's what it does. It nominates for the judiciary, and then you have the legislative that then confirms. So they're trying to break the judicial, legislative, executive division of power. They are trying to basically block Trump's entire agenda with this new theory. Everybody should point out, well, it's pretty cockamamie, because the last Supreme Court justice that Trump nominated got approved very, very quickly because he's highly respected by both sides, and they didn't even raise that point then. So it just shows that they are grasping at straws, but this is what they're going to use when Michael Moore surrounds the Capitol and when they get their rioters out on the streets. I think within just weeks, Roger, let's talk about that timeline, weeks or months before the midterms, certainly, we're going to see them make their move for destabilization, claiming, oh, he's about to put a judge in on his own criminal case. Stop him, and use legislative, judicial, executive ignorance in the Democratic constituencies, foolish little brains, to create this perception and really have them try to move against the president. Clearly, that's the drum that Booker and Schumer and all these people are pushing.
Alex, you're absolutely right. Look, I also think it exposes their game plan. For anybody who thinks that Mueller is not coming after Trump in a bid to remove him, is wrong. And they think this is going to end up in the Congress and in the courts, and therefore they're trying to get there first. The president has a legitimate right to make this appointment, and the Senate will confirm him. But they've exposed their longtime game plan. Despite the fact that Mr. Mueller's probe continues to be exposed as the partisan hit squad that it is, has not lessened in any way his intention to try to take out the duly elected president, Donald Trump.
Roger, thank you so much for joining us. We'll talk to you again very, very soon.
Tonight on The War Room, we expose the two British globalists who, working with George Soros, have gotten a stranglehold on America's digital electronic voting machines. Today at The War Room.
This is critical. So much of the information that ends up defeating the globalist originates on InfoWars. That's why the audience, yes, you are the vanguard. You're not just listening to be informed and to also help us be informed and sending us tips and intel. You are the folks that are reaching out to others so that we can report on the hardcore analysis, then others pick it up later. We end up being proven right, and it ends up changing the world. So 3 o'clock Central today, The War Room. Roger, thank you.
Great to be here.
Speaking of Cory Booker, let's play a clip of that, and then I'll come back with the Watson piece. It is important. This is just as important. This is Cory Booker, the senator, and then we're going to play a Schumer as well. It's just disgusting. Here it is.
I'm a little sort of stunned at the way this is all played out. If you look at the entire list of 20 or so people that he had on, the one person the president could find on that list that would be most assured to rule in his favor, should many of the things you're describing come before the Supreme Court, is this judge. He picked the one guy who has specifically written that a president, in fact, should not be the subject of a criminal investigation, which the president is right now. So this seems to be, of all the people, the most self-serving person he could choose in order to protect himself from this criminal investigation.
Booker thinks his constituents are idiots, which they are. Do you know how many judges and how many Supreme Court justices have said that you can't have a criminal investigation of the president originate out of the executive? That's why you could never get Bill Clinton. You could only have Congress then move with impeachment. Then once they're stripped, then you can do that. That's why nobody ever tried to charge Richard Nixon. He stepped down, then they didn't go ahead with the criminal charges. But you cannot indict a sitting president and then have the case go forward. Because then every two-bit county or city or anything could sit there and bring down a president all day long. Just like Travis County, the Democrats are constantly indicting Rick Perry and Tom DeLay and everybody. It's unbelievable. He thinks you're so stupid. Imagine being the globalist establishment. And they think they can set up a private, above-the-law, tax-exempt, corporate world government owned by a bunch of rich white guys, rich Arabs, and rich Chinese people, basically. Chinese communist, and then they can sit there and everybody else race war with each other and have the media all turn us against each other and then try to get us to reject capitalism and accept socialism and communism that then they administer multinationally. We all live in a system of control where they tell us where to go, where to live, what to eat. Bloomberg says, I want to tell people what to eat. I'm smarter than you. I'm a technocrat, in his own words. Bloomberg has articles about him, about how he's this great technocrat, and he's going to tell you how to live. They are so blind by their arrogance. And then you look at Brexit, that was the first big domino to fall, now with over 50 countries going towards capitalism, becoming populist countries. It's so exciting. And you've got the EU about to collapse. You've got Brexit. 2 years later, May tried to sell it out and keep them in the EU. And that only makes people more angry and more awake. I remember when we passed Brexit, folks go, oh, well, they'll just ignore it. And I said, that's even better. Because once people know they're getting screwed over, they get angry, they get informed. No one even knew that the EU, I remember I was covering the EU 20 years ago, and people were saying, oh, the EU's not going to take over. The EU's just a trade deal. It's not going to do anything. There's no EU army. There's no, and now it's all here. So everything we talked about is mainstream now. They tried to demonize it. They tried to make fun of it. They tried to say it didn't exist forever. But now we can have a real debate. We won. Their bullying, their intimidation, their attempt to say it's anti-Semitic, to say that the EU's corrupt, doesn't work. Or if you want free market, you're racist. People aren't stupid. They see through that. Except for the dumbest of the dumb who are being organized into zombie armies. Let's go to Paul Joseph Watson's powerful report on what Theresa May has been caught doing just days before Trump travels to the UK.
UK Prime Minister Theresa May is hanging by a thread after Brexit Secretary David Davis and Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson resigned. So why did they resign? Because Theresa May brazenly betrayed Brexit by proposing a deal with the EU that would de facto keep the UK in the customs union, subjecting us to the same regulatory and legal framework that we voted to leave, and hampering us from doing trade deals with other countries that would provide us with economic independence and prosperity. The very reason why we voted for Brexit in the first place. Correct me if I'm wrong, but when I went to vote in the referendum, I didn't see a third option that said leave, sign up to everything under a different name, and be the EU's bitch. To illustrate how much of a sellout this was, May ran the plan by Europhile-in-chief Angela Merkel before it was even seen by her own party's MPs. Knowing it was a bad deal, she preempted her own ministers resigning on Friday by telling them they'd be quickly forgotten and revoking access to their government vehicles. And guess who praised the plan? Anna Soubry, Ken Clarke and Vince Cable, three of the biggest Ramonas in Parliament. That tells you everything. As we warned all along, Brexit is being betrayed. Theresa May and her negotiators have cowed and rolled over to the EU at every turn. Her prime negotiator is a Remainer who in his Oxford days was a Soviet fanboy who defended Stalin and implied communism was preferable to capitalism. At this point, they're taking the piss. So what happens next? Well, Boris and Davis have indicated that they resigned not to force Theresa May out, but to force her to revise her disastrous Brexit plan, which, given that she's had 2 years to craft it and has delivered what Boris himself called a giant turd, sounds like a forlorn hope. It's time for Theresa to go. It's time to flush the turd. 15% of Conservative MPs, or 48 of them to be precise, have to write a letter to the 1922 committee triggering a vote of confidence in Theresa May. If she loses, then she's toast. That will trigger a new leadership contest, which hopefully a committed Brexiteer will win. The new leader will then almost certainly feel a need to secure a mandate from the country by calling a new general election. He or she will then have to defeat Labour's Jeremy Corbyn and save the UK from entering a hard-left tyranny ruled by someone who thinks Venezuela's socialist dystopia is a good example to follow. If Corbyn wins, he'll almost certainly derail Brexit or call for a second referendum. If May wins, she'll deliver, at best, a soft Brexit, which is a Brexit in name only, which is no Brexit at all. So it's basically all or nothing. We need a leader who believes Brexit. For most people, that man is Jacob Rees-Mogg. But JRM is a reluctant leader. He said numerous times he doesn't want. Could Rees-Mogg be kingmaker? Could it be time for Boris? Since the day after Brexit, I warned that the vote to leave was merely the start of the battle. Don't expect the elite to take this lying down. They'll just make us vote again in another referendum until they get the result they want. These people are snakes. Don't think the battle is won. It's only just beginning. Theresa May is surrounded by establishment globalists who share the very same attitude that sold us out to the EU in the first place. The very backstab that Margaret Thatcher warned us about.
There'd be no European Central Bank accountable to no one, least of all to national parliaments. Because the point of that kind of European Central Bank is no democracy, taking powers away from every single parliament, and being able to have a single currency and a monetary policy and interest rates which takes all political power away from us. As my right honourable friend said in his first speech after the proposal of a single currency is about the politics of Europe. It is about a federal Europe by the back door.
They have no interest whatsoever in delivering Brexit. They have no loyalty to this sovereign nation. So Conservative MPs have a choice to make. Is your loyalty to Theresa May's dreadful political legacy, a legacy that has betrayed 17.4 million people and the very notion of democracy itself? A legacy that has led directly to the UK's soaring violent crime problem. A legacy that has exacerbated the problem of mass uncontrolled immigration. A legacy that has eroded free speech and emboldened cultures hostile to our own. Is your loyalty to that worth more than your loyalty to your country? Is it worth more than your loyalty to the sanctity of democracy? Is your legacy going to be about how you sold out to Brussels, or how at this pivotal moment in UK political history you stood up for Great Britain?
We are forcing them out in the open. We're engaging them. We're in a fight and we're winning. One of the top First Amendment lawyers in the country, Mark Randazza, is here. He got demonized by the New York Times for taking my case in the whole Sandy Hook matter. But we're not getting into that today. We're getting into the left's crazed attack on free speech and beyond with Mark Randazza straight ahead on the other side. Good to have you here in studio with us.
Good to be here.
We'll be back. Stay with us. Well, Mark Randazza writes a piece for CNN. You see him all over the news. He's recognized as in the top 3 First Amendment lawyers out there. And he represents me in the whole Sandy Hook defamation matter that we're not going to really get into today. But we're going to have 20 questions with him because he can cover the waterfront. He calls himself kind of a classical liberal, not a mainline establishment liberal, not a right-winger, but a classical liberal. I kind of call myself that as well, but all the terms are turned around. But I was asking him about Brett Kavanaugh, his view on him. He's done a deep dive on him on some big issues. His take on Trump, just pragmatically what Trump's doing, and then the state of the crazed left and how he thinks we can counter it. But it's great to have you here with us.
Thanks, Alex. Great to be here.
Where do you want to start? Just on the deep dive you did on Kavanaugh?
You know, I first got some calls from the press on what I thought of Kavanaugh when before he was the nominee, just when his name was being floated. And my initial reaction was pretty bad because he made a decision in Abbas versus Foreign Policy Group, LLC, out of the D.C. Circuit, where he took the D.C. anti-SLAPP law and said it didn't apply in federal court, that anti-SLAPP laws had no place in federal court. Now, as somebody who employs anti-SLAPP laws a lot for my defendants, I was instrumental in getting the Nevada one passed. That really struck me with a negative chord. So my reaction was, this guy's going to be bad for free speech. Then, when he became the nominee, I stayed up all night doing a dive into his First Amendment decisions, and I've really kind of come around a bit. I think he's not going to be bad because in that same Abbas decision, he made a really good statement about reporters asking questions in a case cannot be held liable for defamation because they're simply asking questions. Now, you can ask a question in a way that is quite obviously you're really just saying something defamatory. When did so-and-so stop having sex with goats? That's not a...
Doesn't Brian Stelter look like somebody you wouldn't have babysit your children?
I mean, you could add, that you could probably get away with. But, saying something that's clearly defamatory and throwing a question mark on the end of it is another story. But if you're doing anything that's reasonably close to journalism, you're going to be okay. There's another decision that he made that I really, really liked, where he called Call versus Bureau of National Affairs, where he talked about how the First Amendment guarantees freedom of the press and freedom of speech, and how costly and time-consuming litigation can threaten those freedoms. So, like when you have
which is exactly what the Democrats admit they're doing with lawfare against Trump supporters.
Right. So when you do that, when you file a lawsuit, look, you get a lawsuit filed against you, you come into my office. I mean, I immediately tell you, you better kiss a lot of money goodbye because defense is not cheap. If you want a more modestly priced attorney, we can send you to one. But even then, that's still expensive. And that is
because losing is even more expensive.
Losing is even more expensive. But, when I was a very, very young lawyer, I got handed a defamation case that I was defending all on my own against a very large law firm. And I was pretty proud of myself when I won. And when I handed this client the decision saying, hey, we won, and he looks at me and says, well, if we won, why is my retirement fund empty? And that really struck me. That's why I've been a proponent of the
SLAPP provisions.
Yeah, because I despise seeing someone go out there and exercise their First Amendment rights, and then somebody decides that they want to take a swipe at them just to punish them for using those rights legitimately. And
aren't you glad you chose at Georgetown, who's also suing me, aren't you glad you chose the First Amendment venue? Because that was big then, but it's really big now.
Alex, I didn't choose it. It chose me. Every First Amendment lawyer that I know, this is something that it chooses them. When you're a kid, every one of us has this story, like we call it our quit hassling me, man moment, when we learn about our constitutional rights, and then I'd say within 24 hours of learning about them, you find that somebody's violating them, and then you stand up for them and you get slapped down again. And you got to recognize that if you really want to protect the First Amendment, you really want to protect your constitutional rights, it's a constant fight. It's stressful. It's pretty easy just to let it go. But there's some of us who won't do that. I don't do it because I chose it saying, hey, this is going to be a great way to make.
You got pushed around until you stood up, and you've had some great success doing it. So going out back to the new nominee Kavanaugh.
Yeah,
you got a lot of his decisions here.
I do. I've got about 6 pages of quotes from him, and whether it's commercial speech, whether it's journalism. I'm in general, I'm going to give this guy a B+ coming in. And, a couple days ago, and I admit I was probably a little bit overly negative about him simply because of that one Abbas decision.
Because you did the back of the envelope quick analysis, and now you've had a chance to look into it more.
Yeah, I mean, I'd go crazy if I had done this kind of a all-night dive on everybody who was on the short list, because, of course, knowing Trump, he could have had 5 or 6 people on that list, and then all of a sudden he pulls somebody out of left field. But yeah, in really looking at this guy, I'm optimistic that his view on the First Amendment is going to be good for the country.
Well, that's a good thing, because historically it's been the right-wingers that have been on the wrong side of it. And so how does that juxtapose that the left, I would describe the left uniformly against the First Amendment, uniformly admitting in lawsuits against me, which has flabbergasted you and many lawyers, we're not going to get into the cases themselves, that they say, we want to end the First Amendment, we want to overthrow it, we want to shut it down for everybody but us. They're launching what they've done at the universities as a war outside with actual universities arguing for me to be silenced.
Yeah, look, currently the wind is blowing from the cold wind is blowing from the left today. Those of us who actually believe in the First Amendment, that have stand on the same ground that we did 10 years ago, now we're all being called right-wing. Back then I was being called a libtard. I don't really care one way or the other. I believe in this. This is what I stand to fight. Yes, right now I find the left looking for exceptions, trying to say, I really didn't like Kagan's language a few weeks ago about how the conservative wing was weaponizing the First Amendment. That frankly shouldn't be a pejorative. The First Amendment is a weapon. And
the left has gone way past with everybody's a Nazi, and they go past the First Amendment. They're calling for violence. They're calling for uprisings. I mean, they've really passed the Rubicon.
Look, I don't know that they have gone, I'm a little less pessimistic about it, but yeah, I remember when the first person said it was, it's okay to punch a Nazi, and then, you see
wait till they dump hot coffee on you, because you were talking, I saw it in a bunch of news articles when it came out, you were representing me, because a lot of other lawyers, we already had you to consultant, we're going to be having you involved, but all these other lawyers were scared to sign on the dotted line, and plus it was great. I'd met you, by then you're obviously the best guy for it. But the fact they're now calling you a Nazi and you're getting threats. I mean,
that's fine with me. That's
but the lie, because you represent porn companies, you represent Nazis, you represent Vermin Supreme, you represent left, right, center. So the idea that you are your client is just intellectually a complete fraud. I mean, they know that a defense lawyer, that a First Amendment lawyer, that it's their job to go out and represent somebody, and then to call you a Nazi because you've represented Nazis is just fraud.
Look, I frankly welcome it, because you judge a man by his enemies, and the more they're coming at you, the more it means you're doing something right. Look, I read that New York Times hit piece and I just laughed, and then, of all things, the Huffington Post wrote a follow-up piece where they actually did acknowledge, yeah, I'm proud to represent Vermin Supreme. I represent a group of a political action committee of Muslim feminists, and then at the same time, yeah, I represent the Daily Stormer, because I think if you are a First Amendment lawyer and you pick and choose your clients based on what they have to say, you're not a First Amendment
lawyer. Let's be clear.
You're a hack.
Those Nazi sites, they attack me constantly. They say things about my family that aren't true, particularly Stormfront or whatever. And you know what? They have a right, though. I believe in the First Amendment. I'm a big boy. But the left has said, we get the Nazis first, then we get everybody else.
Well, that's the problem, because it is, when you had the whole punch a Nazi meme, and then it's, well, you can punch a Nazi, and then anyone who doesn't disagree with me doesn't agree with me as a Nazi. Now you just punch anybody who doesn't agree with me.
Yeah, you're a Nazi, boom, bottle over the head.
Right, I mean, kids wearing a Make America Great Again hat. Well, since when does that, wearing a symbol of a sitting president, whether you like him or not, You know, if somebody's wearing a...
Since when does it get you whacked over the head? We'll be back. By the way, I had one of the editors walk in here earlier, an article that's on newswars.com. And I'm not criticizing him for this because we try to, check things and go over things. But normally, if it's something I'm going to get sued for. This is Judge Andrew Napolitano, friend of mine. Respect him. Roger Stone says basically his best friend. He's a really smart guy. He's been on the list to do it as well. I don't think he's sour grapes. He was very happy with Judge Gorsuch. But he says the heart and soul of the establishment is what this new judge is, Brett Kavanaugh. And so the crew's like, well, we're pro-Trump. Are we going to put this out? I'm like, absolutely. People ask about InfoWars. They go, in fact, even mainstream media goes, you'll see a clip of a New York Times article or a Newsweek, and you'll see one person saying this and another saying that. We're just trying to have a free discussion here. And I like Clifford Cunningham. I respect our writer. And I think this is a really good article, that a lot of people are concerned about this, that he's too establishment Republican. And Judge Napolitano is really respected, and he's got an issue, and Rand Paul's got an issue. All I'm saying is Trump is so pragmatic about everything he's doing for the average little guy and the results of it, because I study all these areas. I was just talking about meat packing during the break, something my family in the cattle business has been involved in, and I know some big cattle families that are just getting out of the business because there's 3 packing companies, it's all rigged, and then the cattle producers cannot even make a living. They've set it up like that. Well, Trump behind the scenes is looking, I've been told, to try to bust that up. So separating this from Kavanaugh, you were saying doing the deep dive on him and then looking at what Trump's done in his policies, I wouldn't even call him conservative. I'd call him Americana. And I know you as a classical liberal will take heat for this, but you said, no, I want to say on air right now I like Trump. So in your own words, that's quite a coming out there.
Yeah, I didn't vote for him.
Yeah.
And I don't have, I voted for Gary Johnson. But, I'm at this point, I'm not going to say I'm not voting for him in 2020. He has, I think this trade war that he's started, I want to see the outcome of it. I'm not smart enough when it comes to economics. You asked me a question about the First Amendment, that I know. Economics, I don't. So I could be crazy on this, but I think the outcome of this is going to be good for us. I see him looking at certain economic policies, from almost a Teddy Roosevelt standpoint, more than an establishment standpoint. So, my 401k's never done so well. So I'm also looking at that.
And like you said,
so bad.
He wants to drive down drug prices, not with a socialist answer, but by making them have competition and going, wait, you want to pay for somebody's assisted suicide? And I think if somebody wants to die, that's fine. It's don't have the government involved. Don't make me pay for it, by the way. But you don't want thousands of drugs and treatments blocked sometimes for 20 years given to someone who's terminal, who chooses to try to save their life. You want me to pay for someone to kill themselves, but I can't let them pay to try to save themselves?
No, when he loosened up the regulation as far as experimental treatment, when you see somebody going to Mexico for treatment because they can't try something here because it hasn't been FDA approved, that's sad. If you're desperate, you're at the end of your rope anyway. I don't see any reason why you shouldn't be able to give that a whirl.
How would you describe Trump? I just think very pragmatic, because he's like, look, I love America, but he goes, I'm all for trade in other countries. He goes, China can't have 30, 40, 50% tariffs.
Yeah.
And China can't have lower taxes on us than corporate stuff. That's a tariff. One example is 280% tariffs on all our dairy to Canada. He goes, we have 0 on you. He goes, I'm going to start out with 100%. And they flip out. How is it I can punch you in the face 280 times, but then I'm only going to punch back 100, and then I'm the bad guy?
Yeah, and then when I look at something like that, that seems reasonable. At the same time, I still have to admit where I'm ignorant. And, I took one economics class in 1988, and I got a B in it. So
well, here's the bottom line.
Don't take my word for it.
I've read the CFR. I don't have degrees in all this stuff. I read the boiled down real white papers, not their propaganda in the news. They made the decision in the 50s. The leftist elites did. And they said, America's got half the world's power, half the world's wealth. It's not fair. They were all really socialist and communist and academics. And they said, let's build up China and other countries, and let's have deals with regulations to shut us down, no regulations on them, and let's transfer power to those countries. Now, that was the useful idiot level. The big banks and the big corporations, they just wanted to dominate economically. So China has been set up to take us down. The CFR said, the new century's the Chinese century, America's done. And so then they rigged it, Mark, where they would rise and we would fall, and Trump's saying, So it's totally rigged.
It is, but it's when I see the way these regulations have worked to the benefit of large corporations, and we see essentially, I'm not really sure the nation state is the best way to organize people, but it sure beats an unaccountable corporation. And that's where I see...
Or the Central Committee of the Politburo. The Chinese president is not a president. He has been elected by the Communist Party, 1,000 people. The Politburo selected who could vote. And then they just made him dictator 3 months ago officially. Said, well, now we can never vote to remove you. And your vice president's a dictator.
Well, in general, when we look at the American system, I have similar criticisms because we only have... we say, isn't it terrible they have one-party rule? Well, we have a duopoly, and we have a duopoly that's almost unbreakable. But
so you're for term limits?
Well, I'm not just for term limits. I'm for breaking up the duopoly. I think we should do anything we can to break the backs of the Democratic and the Republican.
I used to feel like that.
Why should they trade off power every 4 to 8 years? They trade off power one way or the other, and the rest of us are not party hacks. Most of us, join one team or the other.
And as a lawyer, you know how complex they make the party apparatus exactly. And that's what keeps people from doing insurrections within the party.
Sure.
But Trump just did it. He just took the Republican Party over.
He did. But, why do you think? I would have loved to see Trump versus Bernie Sanders, because then you have insurgents from both sides. Instead, the Democrats put their hack up, and as usually happens, it should have been a...
Have you heard, and I've confirmed it, Hillary is planning to run in 2020.
Well, if that happens, I'm not going to be very popular back in Massachusetts, but I'm voting for Trump then. There's no way I could see that happening. But I have the same objection to her that I have to another Bush going to the White House.
Oh, we don't need royalty in this country.
Exactly. And if it's, if the Republicans don't put up anybody but a Bush, I'll vote for a Trump. If the Democrats want to put up a Clinton again.
But look at her arrogance. The Democratic Party's bankrupt. She's got $1 billion still in her campaign war chest, a couple billion in her foundation. She did that on purpose. She is the Democratic Party. She owns it, and she's so arrogant that she thinks she's going to stay. It's crazy.
Yeah, look, I predicted she was going to win, so don't take my predictions to the bank.
I predicted Trump was going to win.
Yeah, I didn't. I woke up on an airplane on the way to Warsaw and said I thought it was the Ambien talking when I read the screen. So I was shocked. But
well, let me tell you a little secret. The military didn't get involved in hacking the election. It wasn't the Russians. It was the military and intelligence agencies blocked Hillary trying to steal some key states. And Trump's not just doing this on his own.
Not my area. My area is the First Amendment. So when it comes,
I'm just saying they've got their whole shadow government. But what happens when the shadow government and the deep state rebels? Because Trump's like deep state. That's only the top globalist Democrats that are trying to block him. The general deep state are just people in the whole. You know how countries work. China's got 100 million people outside its country that are military-age men who are really intelligence operatives in their companies and corporations. Congress is about to have hearings on it. Well, you don't think they're the only ones that do that, right?
Well, of course not. We've had that blueprent for years.
Yes.
The British Empire did it. The French have it. We have it, in China.
So the left and all you guys need to surrender because it's over. You're not going to win one. And if you kill Trump, there's backup plans for that. And here's the thing. He did get elected. He actually won in a giant tsunami. But they stole so many votes and so much stuff that he almost lost.
Well, even if you go with the narrative that's actually in the press, he did it fair and square. That's how the Electoral College works. It's there for a reason, because I don't want to live in a country that's simply New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles making all the decisions.
And that's why we have the separation of powers. That's why we have the Electoral College. That's why we have all that. And you're right. Well, see, you're smarter than you say you are. You're just putting provisos in there.
Look.
What do you want to get into when we come back next hour? Because you're on fire. We got a lot to cover.
I think we were talking about the political violence is probably a good thing to talk about.
We need to go to those videos. Antifa attacking the left, running Fox News reporters out of the Supreme Court. I've been at the Supreme Court across the street. They won't even let you film it. And then meanwhile, they say without a permit. Meanwhile, they just let the left go crazy. So that's all coming up briefly. So I have enough money to pay this guy and all the lawsuits against us. Go buy some products at InfoWarsStore.com. Seriously. We've got Super Blue, fluoride-free toothpaste, fortified with colloidal silver and iodine. People love it. It's concentrated for adults and children. We have the mouthwash with the colloidal silver and iodine as well. Nothing like it for your gums. My gums have never been better. I go to the dentist and they go, you haven't been here in 6 months. There's no buildup. Well, it's designed by a dentist, my dad. So InfoWars, store.com, InfoWarsLife.com, or 888-253-3139. Those specials have to end today. The 4th of July specials are ending today. New specials tomorrow, but these are some of the biggest ever. Free shipping, 50% off on almost all items, InfoWarsStore.com, and some incredible new T-shirts there as well. Check those out. We'll be back with hour number 3. All right, next segment's longer, so we'll get into the left's accelerating violence with the top First Amendment lawyer and his horror of it, Mark Randazza. And again, you're like, okay, great. You know, he's a liberal, but a mainline liberal would attack him. He's a classical liberal. It takes a lot of courage. I mean, let me tell you, there are other top lawyers in this country who are, you know, and they are all scared to death. Their law firms won't even let them defend, not just me, but other conservatives and libertarians. There's a real chilling effect going on out there. And that's why if Kavanaugh was a bad guy on the First Amendment, that would be a big problem, and I would oppose his nomination. I just don't want to oppose his nomination and then get something worse. So in the few minutes we've got in this segment, you've done the deep dive on more of his rulings and statements, and you were critical earlier when you just kind of picked up some mainstream news, but you've actually read a bunch of the rulings last night, and now you're B+.
Well, you know, the case that I knew him about was that Abbas case, where he ruled that the anti-SLAPP laws shouldn't be used in federal court. I think that's a bad thing. I don't think his analysis was correct. He was following an opinion by Alex Kaczynski from the Ninth Circuit, who's his former mentor. And, you know, I can understand following your mentor. I got mentors out there that I will always respect them, even if they're wrong. I also didn't really like that he's a double Yale grad. I mean, I think if there's one
He's a super white shoe boy.
Yeah, if there's one thing I think the Supreme Court really needs, it needs diversity. But I'm not talking about diversity of race or gender, although I think...
Maybe a state judge, maybe a regular trial lawyer.
Well, how about somebody who didn't go to Harvard or Yale? Because there is nothing magical about those institutions, you know, except...
People talk about cabals, who really secretly runs things.
Yeah.
It's Harvard or Yale. It's whether it's Zuckerberg, it's like every damn one of them.
Yeah, I mean, look, one of the smartest lawyers I've ever met, a guy by the name of Bob Kornrevere. He went to Catholic University of America. He went to third-tier school, and the guy will, you know, I mean, he's an idol of mine. So we're not talking about like something magical happens to you in Cambridge or New Haven that makes you somehow smarter. So that I didn't like. I didn't like his decision in Abbas, but you know, that's my.
Coach, but back to this. We can expand on this after if we need to, but it's become a mafia. Even people that have gone there and have PhDs from there, like Dr. Boyle we have on, he explains that it's not that they're that good. They've gotten their people all into government, and now they're only incestuously, a form of nepotism, only bringing in their own.
Yeah, it's always, you know, it's always like a relief to me when I see that a judge wasn't necessarily from Harvard, Yale, or Stanford. I mean, there's no reason that we should be picking judges only from those places. Now, there's other schools that are, you know, I don't know why the heck you wasted your money to go there that I wouldn't want to pick people from, but that's a very limited list as well.
Well, you're from Georgetown. It was always respected. That Georgetown's suing me. I mean, a very shameful behavior.
Yeah, look, Georgetown was the first time that I started getting looked at as a conservative when I was like, wait a minute, I'm a pretty left-wing guy from Massachusetts, and I'm not buying into some of their deep political correctness.
We have the guy coming on who started the walk away movement in 30 minutes, and he's a liberal gay guy, and people are throwing him out of businesses, trying to attack him, all because he says, man, the Democrats have become like a cult.
Yeah, it's, you know, I mean, I think it's sort of a natural reaction. Everybody was so shocked when Trump got elected, and you know, the mantra on the Democrat side was, this is going to ruin the country. It's going to create the Fourth Reich. It's going to be the Handmaid's Tale if he gets elected. Well, now what happens if that doesn't happen? Then they're wrong. And you know what? They can't be wrong, so they have to keep this narrative up that it's
the crisis narrative.
And you know, and like, this is not healthy for us. You know, I see people who in families not talking to each other over politics. Are you kidding me?
I have people contacting
your politics.
I have people contacting and basically threatening my family because they're my parents or my wife.
Yeah, it's look, it's crazy. I mean, it really is There's no need for it, and I think that anybody who starts to see that as a problem for any reason needs to reach across and, like, I hang out with people who don't agree with me at all. I love hanging out.
Yeah, because if you don't do that, you're in a cult. We'll be back with all the leftist violence. Stay with us. Mark Rondazza, it's personal family stuff. You don't have to say it if you don't want to, but I was just talking about how they wage wars against our families.
Yeah.
Just because you're a First Amendment lawyer, the stuff that's happened to you. But I talked about taking my daughters to camp 10, 12 days ago to drop them off, and there was InfoWars stickers on trunks and like, 10-year-old girls running up saying we love you, and all of the camp counselor boys, when I pulled up, because they were getting all the trunks and putting them on a trailer to go to different camps, were like, Alex Jones, we love you, taking pictures. But I saw some horrified liberal mothers and they just don't get it. Like, why are the young people ages like 6, 7, 8, 9 up to about 18, which they admit Generation Z is rebelling against SJW garbage?
Of course they do. I mean, that's a natural thing for kids to do. It's like, look, back in the 80s, I was a punk rock kid reacting against Reagan. And
I like punk rock.
Well, conservatives, the new punk rock, man. I mean, that's really what it is right now. You see these kids I look at these kids who are showing up to college in suits and styling themselves as conservatives. I don't care if they're misguided or not. I look at it, I'm glad they're finding a voice, and I'm glad they're not taking what their parents and their professors tell them as gospel, because that's how the marketplace of ideas grows. That's how thought grows, even if they come around. I mean, I admitted right here on air, my initial response to Kavanaugh was negative, and now I'm saying I did a little more research and I realized I think I was wrong. That's just it's a great thing. And when I see kids arguing with their parents over politics, whether it's when I was arguing with my parents saying, "Nah, Reagan's terrible," and this is just a horrible nationalistic, jingoistic regime. And then I see kids doing the same thing to their SJW parents. That's wonderful. The kids are all right.
And, of course, your dad, you were saying, is a huge Make America Great Again guy.
My dad is probably one of the biggest Trump supporters that exists, yes. And that's, I'm pretty middle of the road.
And he's doing it, though, like in an area like Austin in Massachusetts.
Well, Massachusetts is, about as blue as you can get. So, he drives around with his I support Trump sticker on his car, and he doesn't care what anybody thinks. Which, where did I get? Guess that's the chip I got from the old man.
But that's good. I mean, that's especially when they're trying to bully you, then it makes it even more valuable and does make me more aggressive. People come up to me and yell and call me names. Like, what planet are you from? Now, let's get into that since you mentioned it. Yep. You mentioned over 4th of July, there were hundreds of attacks. The left calls it a new civil war. They call it, this uprising, Michael Moore, all of them are calling for it. Then I point out that they say they're launching it and they make a joke out of it. But let's roll some of that video of the Whataburger with the guy grabbing the Make America Great Again hat, throwing, his iced tea on him. Let's go ahead and roll that audio. Then let's go into what happened in Portland. And then let's go into what happened this weekend in San Francisco. A Christian prayer vigil and grown men, Antifa, beating up women. So let's go ahead while you're talking and roll some of this video.
Well, initially when, we saw the video earlier of Richard Spencer getting punched. Now, I don't approve of that. I don't think it's okay to punch a Nazi. I think when you cross the speech violence divide, you're automatically wrong. But then it was, it had this allure to it. You could look at like, well, I'm just punching Nazis. But then everybody who doesn't agree with you is a Nazi. And now it's this kid with his Make America Great Again hat, getting attacked. And then it just becomes Nazis are people I want to punch. Now, what is the end result of that? It isn't like you can just...
You've just become a Nazi because the Nazis dehumanized groups of people and then went after them.
Well, I mean, my position is nobody's a Nazi except the Nazis. I think even neo-Nazis today in America are not what 1930...
Yeah, they're not a bunch of disgruntled World War I veterans that were half nerve-gassed and half alive, all crazed following a psychopath.
But I mean, I saw the best way I saw people to shut down Nazis was I saw a video a while back where this kid just followed a Nazi march with a tuba and played this silly, boom, 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 the tuba sound to it. And it made them look so ridiculous. And I looked at it and I thought it was a thing of beauty. They're exercising their First Amendment rights. He's exercising his. And that was really even...
And the guy made a joke out of it.
Right. That was the way. Now you see this kind of stuff. And you look at this and you see this violence. I mean, people are really getting hurt, you know, and a lot of people think this just started in Charlottesville. This didn't start in Charlottesville. This started in Berkeley. You know, this started on the streets of D.C. And the
former hearts of supposed free speech.
Right, and what I don't want to see, you know, I see it goes from Richard Spencer to any kid in a MAGA hat, and, you know, and next it's you or me.
Well, listen, I told the story since the campaign. I never got it on tape till Seattle. They walk up in a restaurant in front of your family and they knock your drink over or they throw it on you. Because first it was F you, then it's knock your drink over or throw something at you, and then now it's punch you in the back of the head. I had a guy in Hawaii, not this last time, the time before, big guy, and I was just smart enough not to do it, walked by, slapped me in the back of the head and called me a Nazi. Yeah. And so didn't catch it on tape, never really told the story till now, but this is what's going on, and it's getting bad.
It is, and you know, and here's the problem, is that the natural reaction is to show up with shields and helmets and fight back. And, you know, it's hard to tell somebody, don't do that, but I think that not reacting the same way, you know, I think the biggest strength that conservatives can have is don't react the same way. And, you know, maybe that means you got to take a punch and turn the other cheek. I mean, I'm not the most Christian guy in the world, but if that's the lesson you have to learn, because...
Well, I was sitting there...
I don't want to see us rise to a level of actual civil war. And right now, when I look at this, and I look at people attacking one another in the streets...
Men attacking women.
Oh, yeah. Look, Antifa, I mean, I know you don't like cussing on your show, so I won't say exactly what I think of them, but bring it on. You know,
I tell you what, I'll let you say it, but we'll delay it for TV and radio. Go ahead.
That's all right. No, I won't. But... you know, those guys are a bunch of wusses. I mean, are you kidding? You're going to show up with a mask over your face to attack kids and women because you think that your politics are so damn correct or so damn righteous that gives you the right to cross the violence words divide? Dead wrong.
Well, look at how these guys walk like they're so tough. But meanwhile, anytime a man fights them, they get laid on their ass.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you know, they didn't have a mask over their face.
But I'll tell you, what these are is usually street rat, meth head criminals or rich kids, because I mean, look at him beating up that woman. And so these are guys that are just the scum of the earth. I don't even know how to describe them.
What's really troubling about it is you've seen some local governments almost endorse it.
Oh, Portland, San Francisco.
Yeah, and that is, look, the police are supposed to be there to stop this kind of thing. And you know, I like to consider myself a neutral observer of this, because I'm not about to go out there with shields and bats on either side of this, and I'm certainly not identifying with Antifa. But when I see this happen, whatever, you know, the way I used to see things like this is you'd see the police acting as a barrier so that the Nazis could march.
But that's why they do it. It's done in Seattle, it's done in Portland, it's done in San Francisco, it's done in Austin. Because even in Austin, the police, to a certain extent, they stand down.
Yeah.
They're ordered to do it. And so you got 10-1 leftists beating up a prayer vigil. It's never even Nazis now, because most of the Nazis are Fed-run, and, you know, provocateur, the leader, will be a Fed. The others are idiots. But, you know, you'll have a prayer vigil. Usually it's like Hispanic and black Christians, you know, and a few white people standing up. And then here come people beating them up, calling them Nazis, and it's a prayer vigil. And it's just insane to see the cowardice exactly in these blue cities where they've got everything on their side, and then a bunch of wobbly, big-butted soy boys who came out of their World of Warcraft basements to act like tough guys. In Austin, they come out with guns and pointed them at Owen and said, "You're shaking, aren't you, boy?" and wouldn't let him into a park for an event.
Damn. Yeah, this is
our reporter by himself out there with people saying, "We're going to hurt you," and hitting him with clubs.
Right.
With guns.
And, you know, you can't just say, you know, what are you protecting if you're doing that? Like, what is that? It just horrifies me. And what I'm worried about is, you know, I hear from a lot of conservatives that say, well, we're going to go armed. We're going to go ready to defend ourselves. We're going to go ready to protect ourselves. And it's hard to argue with that logic. And
but then they're going to get their Charlottesville event they want.
Yeah. And, you know, there's a horrible tragedy that happened there, and it's the natural result.
Well, the police stood down, and then they herded the alt-right people. Most of them were just reporters covering the alt-right. They herded the very suspicious guys with all the Democrat backgrounds, dressed up like Nazis, into the Antifa, and then somebody got killed. We'll be right back with Mark Randazza. Stay with us. Well, Mark Randazza is here with us, a really smart guy. You ought to start doing a podcast with us. We're about to set these big podcast studios. We're launching on TV and radio. We've already gotten over 400 TV affiliates, over 80 cable stations just in 6 months. So a lot of exciting things happening.
Look, if I can get more people to believe in the neutral principle of the First Amendment, I'm happy to do it.
It's exciting.
And neutral principles of the First Amendment, due process, and nonviolence. I mean, if you can... You convert one person to believe in those things, then I'm happy.
Let me ask you this question. Knowing how people work, being one of the top known trial lawyers out there for the First Amendment, and also one of the legal theorist guys that's quoted everywhere, looking at this fight with the left committing to being anti-free speech, looking at the left really becoming everything they claim they're opposing, and being financed by a lot of big corporations cold-bloodedly who want to control this country because they don't want Trump doing populist things that are good for the people. And that's what he does. He's fired all the lobbyists, everything. It's just incredible how selfless it is. And I'm not somebody to grovel at somebody's feet. It's just true. And I've been persecuted for the truth as well. To sit there and see that, Mark, and disagree if you want to, obviously, at a gut level, how do you see this fight ending? I mean, it's up to all of us, but I just know we're in an epic struggle right now. And the left, because they've lost, is like trying all these things that no one else does, because attacking women and children and old people gets you totally discredited or killed. And I'm not saying I'm going to kill you. I'm just saying the road they're going down is villainous, and I don't understand why they don't see it's hurting them.
Look, I got two predictions. I got an optimistic one and a pessimistic one. For a long time, the right is where the cold wind blew from. The right didn't want communist speech, and First Amendment lawyers defended the communists, defended pornographers. We defended people that the right and the religious wanted to shut down, unpopular religious views, what have you. Now that polarity has flipped, and I'm looking at this as such a great opportunity, because when I can talk to right-wing people and they are all starting to dig down deep and hold on to that marketplace of ideas, that Oliver Wendell Holmesian view of a robust First Amendment, and I say, great, now stay put. And keeping them put there, because it's going to change. The wind is going to change, and then it's going to be from the other side again.
Well, I agree. Here's the problem.
I keep enough people staying put on that ground when then left-wing speech gets attacked again. Maybe we wind up one day, and I can look around at a crowd of people, and I got leftists and rightists, and I've got communists and fascists all sitting together saying, okay, we disagree on all this stuff, but we agree on freedom of expression. And that's the dream of America. That's the eagle's blood. That's what this is.
That's what fuels the country.
That's what we are, man. I mean, look, if we are not the Constitution, America is not a country like any other, all right? We're not an ethnic state. We're not all related. I mean, I have nothing in common ethnically with a native Hawaiian or somebody who's...
So what we have is the Bill of Rights and Constitution, and the fact that just a little bit of that made us so successful. It shows the marketplace of ideas is king, and that people will, in a real free market, go with what's best. So anybody that thinks they're promoting what is the answer, you should support free speech because you're going to win.
Right. America is an idea. It is that idea. And, if we lose that, then what are we? We're nothing. We really mean nothing.
Now, that's the positive view. I want to get to the negative. But
the negative is much worse, okay? I see that it could go the other way, because what we have is people increasingly, now I hear people on the right saying, let's treat the left the way they treat us. Let's beat them at their own game.
That's where I was trying to go and interrupt it, because I see the right wing going, well, if you censored them for their speech, then you got to censor the other side, adopting it and becoming the police of it.
And that's what I'm worried about. I'm really worried, because it's a natural human reaction, is, hey, you guys want to do it to us? We're sick of it. We're going to do it to you. And then you break the ideal down, and all we are is divided into tribes, and then tribes divide into violence, and next thing you know...
countries collapse.
Yeah, every civil war starts this way. And I'm not saying there's a civil war coming. I'm just saying even now we're in like a very cold civil war. And I hate seeing that. I believe in what this country is supposed to stand for, And I want people to come around to say, you know, let's stick with that neutral principle.
And by the way, you're absolutely right. And there are outside corporate and international powers on record fomenting this. Communist China owns most of Hollywood now. They're fomenting all this race war crap, all this man against woman stuff that the weakest minds are buying into. And I don't know how I tell an average leftist. Antifa call themselves Mao youth brigades. When they take their black off, they're really communist. I have video of it all over the country. And it's like, dude, Mao, they kill Buddhists. They put them in, communist China is a nightmare for people. Why would you be endorsing that?
Yeah, I remember when I was in college, it was a group of Maoists. I said, what is wrong with you? I can see you being a Leninist, all right? I can see you believing in communism. Look, every philosophy has something in it worth learning from, even communism. But Maoism? What is wrong with you? There's no maybe a Pol Pot brigade would be a little more ridiculous, but...
Yeah, well, see, that's because you actually are an intellectual and actually know about Mao. I mean, it was the biggest failure. The Chinese say it was. He killed 80+ million people. It's a total freaking nightmare. But they choose, like, the worst thing because it started on college campuses, and then they took over with young people bullying everyone else. So I'm telling you, this Antifa move is a Maoist attack, but they're all about deception. Oh, we're anti-fascist. No, they're Maoist.
So
I can take you to UT right now, or I can take you to Southwest Texas, any of the universities within 20 miles. And I'm telling you, they are, we've gone to their meetings, we've infiltrated them. They are Maoists. They actually pray to Mao Zedong.
I mean, it's just absurd. I mean, I can understand any kind, the allure of some extreme philosophies. It's always going to be alluring to some 15-year-old kid, 16-year-old kid, 19-year-old kid. I mean, that's when you're exploring different ideas.
God, you're right.
Yeah, but Mao, I mean, that's, Mao and child molestation are probably the two things that I'm like, there's no reason to experiment with those. So, look, my pessimistic view is we have people who just simply divide into tribes. We decide that as that wind changes, next thing you know, we use the tricks. The right uses the tricks that the left was using. The left uses the tricks the right was using. And then we have nobody left in the middle saying, let's defend this one principle. So what I'm finding so difficult to do, though, is to yell at people on the right and say, just stay where you are. If the left had done that, back when they were defending communist speech, they were defending porn, they were the ones who were really, allowing religious liberty, getting rid of compelled speech. I mean, we owe the left so much when it comes to protection of freedom of expression.
But you can argue because they were only doing it to undermine the existing structure. Once they got in, they try to block it.
Look, I don't care why they were doing it. I care what they did. And, we owe, if you believe in the First Amendment, like, its heritage is leftist. But now I'm just shocked when I see people who, 10 years ago would have said something completely different. Now saying, well, maybe the First Amendment isn't such a great thing. Or maybe,
well, hell, they're saying they want to basically repeal it in the cases against me. Thank you so much. We'll have you on the broadcast more today. Mark Randazza. Special guest coming up that launched the Walk Away movement. Coming up straight ahead. So, Brandon Strzok is a gay hairdresser from New York and the founder of #WalkAway, one of the top hashtags the last 2 weeks, and a movement that calls for walking away from the Democratic Party of violence, intolerance, divisiveness, and hatred. And you've got state reps doing it. You've got Congress folks talking about it. You've got Alan Dershowitz talking about leaving the party until they stop acting like crazed maniacs. I mean, it's just crazy. So Brandon joins us. Again, #WalkAway. You can see his Twitter there on screen. And he recently went into an electronics store and they wouldn't sell him a microphone, saying that they thought he was, quote, alt-right. So this is a very, very dangerous precedent. We've seen Fox News reporters obviously run out of the Supreme Court building last night by angry crowds. We've seen the physical attacks, the calls for kidnapping and raping Barron by Hollywood stars. It's just a very vicious climate. Antifa beating people up all over the place. I mean, if the Republicans acted like this, I wouldn't even support the Republican Party. I was arrested twice by George W. Bush for asking questions at press conferences and thought that he was a horrible person, and I still do. So I'm a libertarian. But I like Trump because he's turning the country around. But enough from me. Brandon Strzok joins us at US Minority or Us Minority. And there's so much to talk about. He's in London, and I just appreciate his courage, because living in New York and doing what he does, particularly being, a former Democrat, and you know, still I would guess a liberal, is what they're really afraid of. They really bully people. They really attack people that are free thinkers and aren't being inducted into this cult by successive approximation. So, Brandon, thanks for coming on with us.
Thank you for having me.
Where should we start? I mean, start at the beginning and then just go through what's happened the last few weeks as your movement has become so huge. I think because it strikes on the nerve of many liberals I know, many progressives who now are abandoning the Democratic Party.
Well, you know, I was a lifelong Democrat. I was always a liberal. And after the election of Donald Trump, I saw a lot of things that really opened my eyes to how dishonest the media had been during his campaign and how even more dishonest they were after his election. And that would have been bad enough on its own, I think. But as a gay man, I think where the line was really crossed for me was it became very, very clear that the media was using minorities by telling us, putting out these stories that were designed to kind of terrify us and keep us in this, they were selling fear. It was just fear mongering. And it took a little while to figure that out. And it took the help of some, people that were close to me pointing that out to me. But once I saw it, it was one of those things that you can't ever unsee. And so I started trying to kind of speak out about this to other people from two different perspectives. One was, people were running around literally hysterical saying, we have a Nazi in the White House. We have a Nazi in the White House. He's staffing his administration full of, KKK. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I'm discovering that this actually isn't true. So I'm approaching people and saying, look, things aren't as bad as they seem. This thing that you're so upset about, this thing that you're so angry and worked up about, actually, it's kind of being made up by the media. But what I was met with was not people going, oh, thank goodness, you've showed me something that, makes it so that I don't have to be so upset. They were upset with me for bringing them evidence that, Trump's actually not such a horrible human being after all. And maybe we don't have a Nazi in the White House. I started to think, well, this is pretty peculiar. It's almost as though they just want to hate him. People don't want to be presented with evidence that shows that, things aren't as bad as they seem. Well, the more people started turning on me and unfriending me, saying nasty things to me, dragging my reputation through the mud, I thought, I'm not going to put up with this. I'm going to fight back. And I sat down and I wrote what I call kind of the definitive manifesto of everything that's wrong with liberalism and the Democrat Party. And the reason why they're involved is because all of these politicians that I had trusted for so long and who I thought actually cared about me, cared about my community, they went along with all of this. Every lie that the media put out, every false story or every omission, they were right there anytime there was a microphone in their hand to back it up and say, oh yes, he's expected to sign an executive order taking all of your rights away this week. We're doing what we can to stop it. They went right along with all the fear mongering. So I created this video and I created a movement, which is basically encouraging people to walk away from the Democrat Party, walk away from liberalism. I'm not telling anyone where to go. If they end up finding themselves on the right, like I have, great. I now am a registered Republican. And after a lot of research and, really, really digging deep, I'm a Trump supporter now. And I can't wait to vote for him in 2020. But, I'm not telling anyone where to go or what to believe or what to do. I'm saying open your eyes, do your own research, and at the very least, look at the toxic divisiveness, hostility, and now basically very close to, if not exactly, calling for violence on the left and get away from it.
Well, exactly. But take Donald Trump, because there's obviously been some, anti-gay, bigoted stuff that's gone on the Republican Party before, but that's gone away the last few decades. But Trump, with Peter Thiel, who got outed by the liberals because he wouldn't be their minion, and then he's out there, and you got Donald Trump saying, let's all be together and let's all be friends, which everybody should applaud. The media wouldn't even cover it. In fact, They said Trump's anti-LGBT at his convention, and just it's the lying. And that's why so many people, like Candace Owens, she had the feminist movement online stalking her, she confirmed, posing as right-wing males, harassing her, and she learned it was them using it to steer, because she was smart, good-looking, like you, to steer her under their control. It's a cult. And when you find out, well, you're trying to program me to sit there and hate other people and be your slave, I mean, it from folks I've talked to, like Candace, it makes you mad.
Oh yeah, it makes me very angry. It makes me very angry, and it's when I became a liberal, I thought it was because I wanted to be around other people. I had always heard everybody on the right is very racist. Everybody on the right is very small-minded and bigoted. I believed these messages that I heard from the left, and whether it was ever true or not, at this point, it's safe to say we have very much overcorrected. And at this point, all of those things that I became a liberal to fight against, liberalism now is. It's just a constant hostility towards white people. It's constant hostility towards men. There's this bizarre push to sort of demonize heteronormativity. And myself as a gay man, it's not even about gay rights anymore. It's now about adding all of these bizarre sub-acronyms, LGBTQIA. I don't know what gender fluid means. I don't know what two-spirit means. I don't know what gender non-binary is. But I'm told all the time now that as a gay man, I'm privileged. And that, these other non-binary gender fluid people in my community are victims of oppression, and that I am a privileged white gay man. So I should shut my mouth and march along with what they tell me to do.
And then you learn the Tavistock Institute cooked it all up. It's mind control, and they're using America's openness and the fact that we are a very classically liberal society against us, and then bringing in authoritarianism as the answer to free people. And really, all it is classic fog of war confusion. But look, I can tell why they're scared of you. I mean, you're very articulate. And you've got a lot of charisma, and I think you should be very, very careful. I know you've already been threatened and stuff. We'll talk about some when we come back. It's not about victimology. I get threatened and attacked too. But let me tell you, they're scared of you because you're a good-looking guy. You're articulate. You're telling the truth. We're about to go to break, but how much harassment have you dealt with?
Well, I've actually dealt with more harassment on a personal level than on a public level. The public level, I guess I don't really care about that much. I just sort of disregard those messages. But some really nasty stuff from people who have known me for a long, long time and should know better.
Exactly. So you've had family, you've had friends turn on you, walk away from you.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. If only they walked away. I mean, believe me, there were some choice words on the way out the door.
Well, Mark Randazza didn't want to tell the story. He's First Amendment lawyer here, what happened to him with his family. It's crazy. And he's like a liberal First Amendment lawyer. They're calling him, it's crazy. Brandon will be right back at Twitter. America's a prize, and a bunch of multinational corporations are using race war, culture war. It's in the WikiLeaks to turn us against each other. Doesn't mean there isn't racism or any of that stuff going on. It means that there are people exacerbating it. And let me tell you, Brandon Strzok of the Walk Away movement that's just been out for 2 weeks. It's being demonized and attacked by the entire left. And let me tell you, I know when destiny happens, I know at a gut level when I've just heard the answer. So as soon as I get off air here and Paul Watson takes over in 15 minutes from London, where our guest just so happens to be, I am going to get on the phone, the bat phone, and I never call the bat phone. Believe me, they're going to answer because I never call. When I call, it's always, important. And get them on the phone with this gentleman because I know when I heard it that it was victory to unify America, to stop the Civil War. He wasn't going to announce it today, but he's going to go ahead and get into some of it. He won't get into behind-the-scenes stuff, but I know this has been brought to the president, but you can't do much to the White House because that's so controlled because the national security issues. You got to do it through the campaign. So, Brandon, please lay out what you said and then also how they're attacking you and, their ridiculous disinfo. Because when people walk away from the Democrats and in capitals across the country and in D.C., come together and hug each other left and right for a future of America, and the Antifa shows up and there's only a half dozen of them, it is going to be Martin Luther King level, I have a dream stuff. I mean, I just know destiny when I hear it. So you're asking my advice. I think you should tell people your millennium level idea. I mean, it's like one of those ideas that you only hear a few times in a lifetime, and usually people ignore it. This is history. And that's why there's so please tell folks the idea you came up with.
Yeah, you got it, Alex. So, you know, a lot of what's coming out of the left right now is this narrative that my campaign is Russian bots, which is absolutely ridiculous. Of course, we have real people giving testimonials for the Walkaway campaign. But it sort of sparked an idea in my mind, since there's going to be a lot of naysayers out there who are going to try to dismiss this campaign and what's happening with Walkaway as bots and as not real. I thought to myself, you know what we really need to do is I'm going to organize a walkaway march on Washington, a nationwide walkaway march. And what this is going to be is really unifying people from the left, unifying people from the right, bringing everybody together kind of on the same page. And listen, if you're not walking away from the Democrat Party, that's fine. But I think that at this point, people should at least be willing to say, I'm walking away from the hatefulness. I'm walking away from the divisiveness. I'm walking away from the violent rhetoric and the division. So this is what I want to do. I want to, in the fall, have an amazing demonstration organization nationwide where we do a nationwide march on Washington. I want it to be the biggest, most incredible, and most powerful march this nation has ever seen.
I totally agree. And like you said, you need the president to get involved. That will make it all happen quicker. But they're going to try to launch a summer of rage and civil war in their own words. So I think at least the first level of the march, where, you know, in New York or D.C. or wherever you pick as a prototype, have the police out and everything, and just have it be a march of unity to support the First Amendment and progress for America. It doesn't mean you're walking away from the Democrats. It mean, and for some of the right wing does some mean stuff too. I'm not perfect. And because Mike Cernovich was on a few weeks ago, and he says, and he's a smart guy, he said he felt it. It was like a couple of years ago, he knew Trump would win, just like I did. He has this image of not attacking the left anymore, even when they attack us, but just trying to hug them, like Kanye West has been talking about. And of course, there'll still be haters, but I agree, checkmating these globalists trying to make us all, these social engineers, fight with each other, and just having a march where we're all over here, and this is our side, liberal, conservative, whatever, we're going to hug, we're going to call for unity, we're going to call for not being violent, and then let the haters be over here. And I think it's going to be so clear that it's going to devastate them. But here's the deal. You think they're after you now. This idea, your leadership, why didn't I think of this? They are really going to come after you now. And I'm not just saying that. I know in my gut level. So I asked you, I said, do you have a Kickstarter or a GoFundMe? You go, yeah, we just set it up. I said, listen, even before he came on, I said, you know, I want to make a $10,000 donation. Not that I have a lot of money, this fella, because I can tell what he's doing really scares him and is really good. And then once I heard you say, yeah, what do? I need to talk to the president. I need to try to get some help. We need to help you right now. So you've just launched, you know, a funding operation to try to get some basic money for this. You need to be flooded, folks. And believe me, I know at a gut level what's going to work and what's not. So if people fund this, I couldn't see a better place for people to do it. So I'm pledging $10,000 that we'll donate right after the show to the account. I want it online. I want people to see that happen. So please make sure that happens. You've raised $26,000. You need to raise way more than $30,000 to launch something that is walking away from the globalists trying to cause a civil war. We have their own documents. This is beautiful. Walk away from the race war. Walk away from the sex war. Walk away from the globalist and Soros-instituted civil war he's trying to fund. That's just beautiful. Please continue. How do folks go donate right now?
Well, there are two ways that people can donate. I've set up a GoFundMe and I've set up a Patreon account. Both of these things are accessible if they go to walkawaycampaign.com and click on sponsorship. The GoFundMe is great if you're somebody who's just able to make a one-time donation of any amount. We appreciate anything that you can do. The Patreon is a great option if you're somebody who's able to do, there you go, if you're somebody who's able to do a monthly sponsorship. What that means is you'll sign up once a month, they'll take something out of your account, whether it's $5, whether it's $1,000.
And say the address again. Say the address again.
Walkawaycampaign.com.
And let me add this right now. When you have a total win-win, you know it already. It's like, you know, you meet the woman you know is going to be your wife you're going to have children with. It's guaranteed. Okay, I'm telling you, this is already one of the biggest things out there. They're already totally scared. This idea is pure genius. This guy's ready to carry it out. He's already been having victory from day one. My gut tells me, I know he's for real. And I'm telling you, we have a landslide here if this takes off, not just a win. We have a landslide 2018 securing the entire future. I'm getting chills right now. And just thank God that when we reached out, you said, oh, I'm already reaching out. I want your advice on this. This is perfect storm stuff, Brandon.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you so much. Yeah, I had a feeling that you would be somebody who would be very enthusiastic about this, and I feel exactly the same way you do. I mean, it was my idea, but I also thought to myself, this is something that really possibly not only has the potential to do a lot of healing, but possibly even preventing a civil war.
And you're just saying, just walk away. Like, it means don't fight. It means just don't be under this cult control. Oh, this is divinely inspired. I'm telling you, I know the zeitgeist when I'm close to it, and I am now in the center of it. Oh, ooh. We'll be right back with 5 more minutes with our guest, and POBox is taking over. But this is history. Brandon Straka of the incredible international movement Walk Away, hashtag Walk Away, he's here, and he shared with me this idea of, you're going to call me a Russian bot, you're going to make all these lies up. I want people to come together in mass rallies. Well, we've been talking about this, and I can tell you, I know the White House is already on it, and we're going to make some phone calls as soon as I'm off in 5 minutes. But listen, things are moving fast. Please come back on tomorrow for 30 minutes so you can just talk, because I'm really impressed. No wonder they're so scared. In the 4 minutes we have left, Brandon, what else do you want to impart to people about your vision and really this this shift we're seeing, not just by you, but when I go to the mall, I get mobbed by minorities, blacks, Hispanics, Asians. They want to come together. They want freedom. They see through it. I think libertarian conservatism, Americana, is the new punk rock.
I absolutely agree. Friends of mine and I always say that conservatism is the new counterculture. It's actually so much more fun over here, and it's actually so much more inclusive. You know, and there's so much more actual love and tolerance happening on the right than there is on the left. I mean, I guess I think that's a good ending point right there. You asked me, what do I want to say? I mean, if I were to speak directly to my own community or even racial minorities in America, you know, I would say to these people, look, the people on the left and the Democrats want to try to tell you over and over again that they're on your side, they're looking out for you, that you're only safe with them. But the truth of the matter is, they're actually using fear tactics to keep you in a constant state of terror so that they can manipulate your behavior. And that's not happening on the right. In fact, on the right, I'm finding a lot of love and warm embrace from the whole community over here since I began the Walk Away campaign. And I want minorities in America to know that you have a choice. You don't have to be a Democrat. You don't have to be a liberal. You actually have a seat at the table on the right. There's a lot of really great people who would love to have you over on the right in the thinking class of people. And I hope that people consider walking away.
And I like how you made the point, beyond even walking away from the Democrats, because it'd be great if the Democrats reformed themselves and became, you know, free thinkers again, because we need more than 2 parties, not just one that's being half decent now. It's very frightening that we've only got one party halfway operating, you know, in reality, because the Republicans have their own problems. Is that just walk away from the Democrat cult. Walk away from the buses show up with the new kids going to college and they bring them in and go, you got to be in our group. This is the professors. They're all out to get you. There's Nazis on campus. And then they go spray paint swastikas on their dorm at night hundreds of times and get caught. This is what they did to Candace Owens. I mean, it's like, it's so authoritarian. This is the new authoritarianism, and people are rejecting it.
Yes. Well, I mean, the other day I was refused service at a store by another gay man. Yeah. So, yeah.
And what did he say? I think you're alt-right. You're going to use this for speech, so you can't have it. As if you're even alt-right, that some Hillary, Southern Poverty Law Center, you know, I mean, let me tell you, almost all those Nazi leaders have been proven to be operatives, okay? They're actors, it's staged. I'm sorry I'm ranting. It's just to say that you're alt-right or I'm alt-right is horse manure.
I don't even know what alt-right means. I don't think anybody really knows what it means. But I can tell you that I'm not alt-right. I'm actually just a really good person. I believe in equality for all people. I believe in empowering all people in America, whether they be black, white, straight, gay. I think everybody deserves an equal opportunity and an equal chance. And that's what I'm about. So if that's alt-right, then I don't know. You know,
looking at Kanye, just the energy, and from you, I get the same. It's just an energy of, we're not going to be controlled. We're going to move forward. We're not going to be inducted into this politically correct cult. And that is universal. That is unifying.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as gay people, we kind of went through this civil rights struggle to, we're fighting for, marriage equality, this and that. We got that. And this, in my opinion, should be the most exciting time in anybody in the gay community's life, because we're not even a wedge issue anymore. Our rights are not up for debate. And so this should be a time where it's like we get to be full participants in the democratic
process. Instead, they're creating a new wedge and saying you're now part of the elite class. Let me say bye to you during the break. Amazing. Paul Watts is coming up. History's happening right now. I love the smell of victory in the morning. And if you're a leftist, authoritarian control freak, or a right-wing control freak, this isn't your show, and I understand that. We're trying to unify around believing in free market and religious freedom and economic freedom, and we've got a big tent for everybody. And we just had Brandon Strzok on, who has launched the hashtag walkaway movement. And the left, just like they call me a Russian bot or Trump a Russian bot, he then had the idea to have a nationwide march. And he got it directly to the president. I've been authorized to tell you that, but then a few days went on, and so I'm going to try to get him ponied up, hitched up with some folks. And that's why I do a lot of this behind the scenes, who can understand how big this is. And I recommended how this should be done. This is such a big deal. I would have some Oprah Winfrey style deals in a controlled environment, because the left's going to try to infiltrate this, for the left and right who don't agree with the left and all the race war to come together and say, we believe in a future, we believe in not having civil war, we believe in not having violence, gives the president a chance to see it. Have everybody from Peter Thiel to, from Judge Napolitano to you name it there. Because the wizard's never talking, he just keeps walking. I don't even need to be involved in it. I'm the bad guy that hits the barbed wire and says all the hard things and gets the attacks. I don't even want a seat at that table, even though I've been offered one. I will not be there. And that's my job. I never talk, I just keep walking. Even though I talk, you get what I'm saying. I'm always moving on to the next target. So let me tell you, I know zeitgeist when I see it. I know victory when I see it. This walkaway thing is explosive. And I was at the mall this weekend, and I was mobbed by Hispanic Americans, mobbed. Because they know the media's punking everybody and playing games. And of every walk in life, guys with tattoos, families, you name it, black families, you name it. But I saw some white people came over and shook my hand, but I'd see liberals going, and then they would get even more freaked out. Some of the liberal store clerks saw me sitting there taking photos with Hispanic family after Hispanic family, like 6, 7 in a row. And I saw some leftists just like, they were looking. And I even walked over. My wife's like, please don't turn your camera on. I'm like, let me guess, you don't like me. And the guy looks down and he goes, Alex, I don't know what to think anymore. You see? I took my daughters a week and a half ago to camp. And I pull up where they tell you to go to get all their trunks off and all that. And it's all the young, 16, 17, 18-year-old camp counselors. The males are there, in their evil gender role, unloading the trunks. And they're all listeners. And then I go to take both of my daughters to their camp, separate areas in this big complex. And there's InfoWars stickers. I'm looking here, there. Paul Watson, they love him. They love Steven Crowder. We are so close to victory right now. And thanks to Kanye and Drudge and everybody. And it's a magic time, Paul. It's a magic time. What do you think of this Brandon Strzok idea of a nationwide march and movements everywhere of people that don't want to kill each other, people that don't hate each other from the left and right coming together, not even walking away from the Democrats. I say that too, but walking away from the hate and walking away from any Democratic rally. They always tell the Democrats, don't talk to Alex or don't talk to anybody. Don't talk to Fox News. Don't talk to, it's a cult. No, we're going to talk. Walk away from the cult that tells you don't talk. Paul, how big is this? I mean, at a gut level.
It's big because they no longer have an argument, Alex. The reason they say don't talk to people is because that muscle has become so flaccid, that argument muscle, that they don't have one. So to even engage in a conversation means automatic defeat to them because they've got no argument whatsoever. In fact, I don't know if you've seen the video. I wrote an article about this about a couple of hours ago. It's up on Infowars.com. It's literally a guy outside the Supreme Court with a bullhorn reading out constitutional passages, and they're just screaming in his face. It's like scream helplessly at the sky, but they're doing it in this guy's face. And it's literally all they've got left.
What's the name of the article? Everybody needs to get this viral. Infowars.com. What's the name of the article? Oh, just 300 show up for protest against Trump's Supreme Court?
It's not that one. It's not that one. It's the later one. I'll find it.
We'll go back to it in a minute.
Liberals triggered into literal screaming fit by man reading Constitution. It's up on Infowars.com right now.
Continue, please.
So, yeah, basically, the only criticism you get for that walk-away movement is, oh, but you're playing identity politics, Alex. Well, no, we're using identity politics in some senses to unite people. They only ever use them to divide people. So that's where people can actually come together and have an impact. And when all you've literally got is having a screaming hissy fit in someone's face as a means of conversation, that's not going to resonate very well with any right-thinking person, is it? So at this point, we're way ahead of the game, Alex.
We'll have that audio and video. You're taking over right now. You got a big guest coming on. I should have mentioned that. Thanks for letting me hijack it, but I always love talking to you here on air, Paul. But exactly. We're saying to Democrats that are disillusioned by the hating America rhetoric, all the race baiting, all the Russian bot crap, who are sick of Hillary getting ready to run again, just come out and meet us like a neighborhood, party or something, and everybody that wants to fight with each other, over there, everybody that wants to come together and hug, come over here. The WikiLeaks, all of it is about division. And we're about unity, just saying we're all allowed to have freedom of speech. I think this, just like you said, hashtag walk away was genius. It's so simple. Don't do anything violent, whatever. Walk away, and then walk away and find normal people and come together. I'm telling you, we have just discovered the next level. I know it. I'm telling you, we got it. All of us, I could tell that guy's totally for real. We've got to fully get behind this, Paul.
Yeah, and then we see similar things happening in the UK. You've probably heard about this Trump baby balloon that's going to be flown over Houses of Parliament when Trump visits on Friday. He's not even going to visit London, but they're going to do it anyway. Okay, so it took them about a month with sustained mainstream media coverage, a month to raise about £30,000, which is about $40,000, to pay for that Trump balloon. Somebody did an oppositional response to that, a Sadiq Khan baby balloon. It took them 3 days to launch a greater amount of money with zero press attention whatsoever, virtually zero. So your guest is talking about, conservatism is a new counterculture. They can no longer claim to be anti-establishment. In fact, when you dig into this, the people behind the Trump baby balloon, they're very wealthy. They own like 2 million. The guy who paid for it owns 2 million townhouses in London. He's from a wealthy political family.
2 million townhouses?
No, I mean £2 million. But he's from a wealthy political family. He's claiming that it's anti-establishment. Okay, you're not anti-establishment. You're upper middle class. You've got a smorgasbord of mainstream media attention to get this funded.
And all you can raise is £30,000, like $50,000. My only question is, why is the Sadiq Khan baby balloon, why are his diapers not full of crap? We need brown diapers on that piece of crap.
Or you could make it into a kind of pig, which in fact that has been suggested by the organizers.
Oh, he's an Islamist. A pig in diapers. A pig with his head on it.
It was actually Piers Morgan who suggested that, because it was Sadiq Khan that approved the Trump baby blimp. I mean, he's not busy enough with all the violent crime happening in London. He had time to approve that, though. So is he going to approve himself as a baby, a pig baby, and is that going to be flown over London? Because they've already got it funded. They're just waiting on approval, and that is the guest who I'm going to be talking to later today on the show.
And let's not forget, that baby is kicking their butt up and down the street.
Well, it will be, yeah. But we've got a Trump visit this weekend, Friday. We've had visits from Erdogan, the Islamist dictator of Turkey, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. They torture people. They put gay people in camps. They're basically war criminals, what they're doing in Yemen. No protest against that. But Donald Trump comes, the leader of the free world, and they all spit out their dummies. They're all out on the streets once again, Alex.
You're taking over, Paul. Great job. My point is, Trump is dominating, and they've got him as a caricature making fun of him. Well, this idiot just aced all of you. Newswars.com, Infowars.com, the big 4th of July sale, 50% off. and free shipping ends today. We need your financial support. Please commit to do it. It's great products you need. Paul Watson takes over now.
We're live. It is the fourth hour of the Alex Jones Show on this July 10th edition, 2018. In the next segment, we're going to talk to our guest, who is Yanni Bruer. He is the man behind the Sadiq Khan baby balloon, which is a counter-protest, in essence, to the Donald Trump baby balloon that's going to be flown over the Houses of Parliament, or at least nearby, on Friday when Trump visits the United Kingdom. He's not going to be visiting London at all, because basically our cowardly conservative in name only government would not extend the invitation of a state visit to Donald Trump. It's only going to be a working visit. So he's not even going to get anywhere near London, basically, because they're so petrified, God forbid, that protesters might emerge. Again, a damning indictment of the cowardice, the sheer unparalleled cowardice of our conservative in name only government that has basically just betrayed Brexit full scale now. And finally, at least they're being honest about the fact, and we can move forward from that position. But we're going to talk about the Trump balloon, the Sadiq Khan balloon, later on. Let's talk first about YouTube, which has basically introduced new guidelines or new algorithm changes once again, without notifying their subscriber base, without notifying their biggest creators. Obviously, they do that every single time. Headline out of Wired News: YouTube debuts plan to promote and fund authoritative news. Well, gee, I wonder what this is going to be all about. Following a year in which YouTube has repeatedly promoted conspiracy theory videos, it didn't promote them, they just happened to pop up. During breaking news events like the shootings in Parkland, the company now announced Monday a slew of new features it hopes will make news on the platform more reliable and less susceptible to manipulation. The company is also investing $25 million in grants to news organizations looking to expand their video operations. Now, this is the key point. According to YouTube executives, the goal is to identify authoritative news sources, bring those videos to the top of users' feeds, and support quality journalism. So, in other words, all these news organizations who exist on YouTube are totally crap at it. They don't know what the hell they're doing. They need the system to be gamed. They need a helping hand simply to compete with the people on YouTube who do know what they're doing. That's what it's all about. You go and look at some of these news organizations, the likes of CNN. I mean, combined, my own channel, Alex Jones' channel, got more subscribers than CNN, or at least it did on last check. Most of their videos don't go viral. You look at YouTube content creators like MSNBC, mainstream news organizations, NBC, CBS. They're terrible. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know how to have viral videos. They're not solely focused on it. So now they're going to be given a handout, basically. Not like they're, giant monopoly conglomerate organizations already with huge swaths of money coming in. They're going to be given huge amounts of money by Google to compete with other people on YouTube. And that's not enough. No, they need to change the algorithm to rank all these legacy media news outlets above everyone else, because even with millions and millions of dollars flooding into their coffers, that still is not enough to help them compete, because they're so utterly useless, anodyne, boring. Nobody wants to watch them, so they need the system to be gamed. This is what I've been warning about for over a year now. The fact that we're all slaves to the algorithm. In fact, you can look at the search engine. Obviously, YouTube's owned by Google. Look at the search engine as well. I mean, I can search for headlines that are almost verbatim what I wrote on Infowars.com, or the key terms of an article that I wrote for Infowars.com about anything, mainly about the migrant crisis and things like that. The top 10, the top 20 links on the first page, Snopes.com, Washington Post, all these ridiculous fact checker websites that have proven to be completely partisan, completely biased time and time again. Even when you put in key terms for an article, it ignores those terms and simply throws up negative information, for example, about Alex Jones. Now, Alex Jones has you search for stuff about the migrant crisis, articles I wrote a year ago, 2 years ago. It comes up with Alex Jones's court case. There's nothing whatsoever to do with it, because they've artificially gamed the algorithm to promote negative information about Infowars.com, about Alex Jones, and put it above the information that you're actually searching for. So they're that intent on burying information, on manipulating people. we've had studies which we've featured before where they can shift millions and millions of votes on the day of an election simply by placing one candidate above another in a Google search result. They can shift millions of votes. They've proven it in India, in all these different countries. So it doesn't matter how much reach you have, really. If they control the algorithm, then we're in trouble. That's why, you know, that's now finally starting about some kind of government regulation. Basically, Google search ranking manipulation is affecting elections. They did a giant study into this in India and a couple of other countries. And again, depending on the platforms, how they were presented in a negative or positive light, and the search results in order, they could shift millions and millions of votes. Now they're doing the same on YouTube and talking about, in fact, they mention us. They get into it in this article. That's one reason why known propagandists, they're talking about the algorithm, spreading falsehoods, is one reason why known propagandists like Alex Jones of InfoWars have managed to build wildly successful channels on the back of conspiracy theories. So again, it's this attitude that they need to protect you from conspiracy theories. God forbid. And in fact, in this article, they talk about things like the Bermuda Triangle. It's not even political. You can't even have people making fun conspiracy videos about the Bermuda Triangle without them slapping a fact check on it. Like, who even cares? Like slapping a fact check on Bigfoot or something like that. UFOs. It's not even political. And they say, no, we're even going to relegate that content. How dare you even talk about it? So, again, it's this nannying idea that you have to be protected from conspiracy theory videos on YouTube. No, some people want to watch that. So if they want to search for it, they want to watch it, that's what should come up. Most of these conspiracy videos annoy the hell out of me too. You know, everything's a false flag, everything's staged. But if people want to watch that, they should be allowed to watch it without you nannying them and saying, no, you can't have that. So we're literally going to change the algorithm and bury you beneath 20 stupid CNN videos, which aren't even related to the subject that you're searching about. It's absolutely ridiculous, but it shows how desperate they are in trying to come back and trying to compete with people who literally spend 10, 15 years of their lives at this point building a YouTube career, building a YouTube personality, building the infrastructure of actual independent news organizations. I'm not even talking about InfoWars. I'm talking about, you know, people like Philip DeFranco. He's essentially his own independent news organization. Those are the people that are going to get punished by it. And it's because they can't compete. It's because to be successful on YouTube, you need to have a personality. Okay? Most people who work for the mainstream media do not have a personality. And it takes years and years to build a loyal audience that will want to watch every single one of your videos. That's how you build up an audience. That's how you go viral. That's how you build up a huge subscriber base. Mainstream media has no idea how to achieve that. So now YouTube, Google, has said, oh, we'll just give you $25 million each. We'll just boost you up artificially. We'll rig the system. And now will you be able to compete? Even after this, they probably will still fail because they're so utterly useless and they don't know what they're doing when it comes to YouTube, and they're just going to try and censor everybody else. We'll be back on the Alex Jones Show live, Infowars.com. Go away. We are back. It is the fourth hour of the Alex Jones Show. Now we're going to delve into this issue of the Sadiq Khan baby balloon. Of course, the big news headlines this week were all about the Donald Trump baby balloon. And in fact, I'm reading a headline here from Spiked magazine. Who's the real baby here? It gets into who's behind this Donald Trump baby balloon. It's a 20-foot baby balloon of Donald Trump in a nappy, which they plan to fly near the Houses of Parliament when Trump visits this week, despite the fact that Donald Trump isn't going anywhere near London because our conservative and name-only government is so afraid of the protesters who might show up. So basically, they've got this 20-foot balloon ready to fly near the Houses of Parliament. This is what it says about it in this Spiked magazine article, Who's the Real Baby Here? The anti-Trump stunt has been organized by environmental activist Leo Murray, the great-grandson of Labour politician Anthony Greenwood. Murray, who rents out 2 flats in a £1.8 million townhouse in Hammersmith, has written a piece for The Guardian explaining his reasons. Well, of course he has. And basically it goes on to say that on the morning Trump was elected, this guy cried, oh, boo-hoo, he cried his eyes out. Now he's going to get his revenge by launching this Trump balloon near the Houses of Parliament, goes on to basically say that they are justifying this. They're saying that the motive behind this is because they're fighting back against the establishment. So a project initiated by a super rich member of a political family in London that lives in a cushy townhouse in Hammersmith, £2 million, a project approved by the mayor of London, that's anti-establishment, is it? No, it isn't. That's ridiculous. It's another Corbynista, upper middle class bourgeoisie pretending to be anti-establishment, pretending to be working class when they're not. This is what we see over and over again. And now we have on the line Yanni Brewer, who is the man behind the response to this, which is the Sadiq Khan baby balloon, which he intends to fly at some point over London over the next few weeks. It raised over $50,000 now, over £40,000 in basically less than a week. And as I said earlier, they raised more money in significantly less time than the Trump baby balloon, with virtually zero media coverage. An absolutely fantastic effort. They beat them. They're still not getting the recognition they deserve. But Yanni Brewer, welcome to the show.
Cool. Thanks for having me, Paul.
Now, first, I just want to ask you about what inspired you to start this project, and going beyond just flying the balloon, what's the ultimate plan for this project?
Yeah, so I mean, in the project, the reason for doing this, I mean, was I was really annoyed at Khan's willingness to insult the most powerful man in the Western world, Donald Trump. You know, he's a friend of Britain, he's half British himself, and we need those kind of friends after Brexit. So I was really irritated by it, and the fact that Sadiq Khan thinks that he can say that Donald Trump isn't welcome, or the President of the United States, a great ally of ours, isn't welcome to London or to the UK on our behalf when he's not elected to represent us is really frustrating and irritating. So I wanted to address the serious issue of free speech as well in a light-hearted way. And I thought the best way to do that would be a tit-for-tat move, and see if Sadiq Khan is willing to have a giant blimp of himself, caricature of himself, and permit his own insulting mockery in the name of free speech. And moving now, beyond... Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and beyond this, you know, I think everyone's had enough of Sadiq Khan in terms of the crime and him trying to talk on our behalf. And like you said, what's the bigger reason behind it? The bigger reason is to try and remove Khan from office. He's clearly not fit to be mayor. We've seen that with the soaring crime rates in London, and his failure and unwillingness to address those serious issues.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but you plan to have some kind of event. I don't know how much you want to get into this, but you plan on having some kind of event which draws attention to the massive violent crime problems we've been having in London. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the idea is to synchronize the Baby Khan balloon, blimp, and have it airborne at this event. The event will be Make London Great, Make London Safe Again, sorry. It'll be sometime in August. We're kind of working on the exact details of it, but it'll be sometime in August with the aim of trying to make London safe again. And of course, you know, London can't be safe with Sadiq Khan as mayor.
Now, let's talk about the media attention, because, as I mentioned earlier, you made more money in less time than the Trump baby balloon, despite the fact that they basically had a week or more of sustained, intense media coverage. How interested has the mainstream media been in your project?
Yeah, so we went live on Thursday. Today's Tuesday, so 5 days. We've made 40,000. I think the Trump balloon has made about 27,000 in over a month. So it has been quite astonishing, really. The mainstream media, after you got involved, I had a couple of messages from a few people. Yesterday and today, it's picked up a little bit. On the Victoria Derbyshire show tomorrow at the BBC. The Sun have contacted me. I think the I newspaper in the UK have done a piece. But it's obviously nowhere near as much as the baby Trump balloon.
So it was only after you started making serious money and getting this funded that they actually had to pay attention to it. You got more money in 3 days than they got in 30 days. Absolutely monumental effort. But, you know, with this Trump visit, we've had, I've spoken to people in UKIP and others who've said, you know, they've tried to have Trump welcoming street parties or celebrations, not even protests. They're being told no by the police. Obviously, the police have authorized these giant protests to take place on Friday. Sadiq Khan has authorized the blimp to go up on Friday. Would he have approved a giant inflatable black Barack Obama baby blimp flying over Parliament? This is the question. And has he already approved your balloon, or is that still in the works?
That's still in the works. And no, of course he wouldn't have approved a baby Obama, would he? It just wouldn't have happened. I saw that today he was on the, Great Morning Britain show or something with Piers Morgan. And Piers Morgan asked him, he said, if someone makes a baby blimp of you, or you as a pig caricature, would you be willing to fly? And he said, if it's a safe and peaceful demonstration, then yes. So based on that, I don't see any reason why it won't go ahead. And I think he's kind of pigeonholed himself a little bit in terms of his maneuvers now.
So he's basically backed himself into a corner. What exactly is this blimp going to look like? Is it just going to be Sadiq in a nappy, or are you going to incorporate some kind of pig design into it now that they've mentioned that?
It's currently with an illustration artist, an illustrator. So we're going to work on a couple of different designs, see what's best. But, it's got to capture the horrible features of Sadiq, the horrible hook nose, the bags under the eyes, and it's going to be pretty gruesome.
We'll see how triggered he gets, because that was my response when I first read about the Trump balloon. A lot of people on the right said, oh, this is a disgrace, this is insulting the president, which it is, but that's kind of not the reaction you have, because then you get called a snowflake. They say you're triggered. Obviously, they're too dim-witted to think up their own insults, so they just use our insults against us. But your response is exactly right. You take that and you turn it back on them. Then you make him look like an absolute hypocrite if he doesn't authorize this. So I'm guessing that was your response. The response wasn't to get offended by the Trump baby balloon. It was to respond in the way you did, which was to use the exact same stunt against them, right?
Exactly, yeah. So I thought, okay, if you want to play that game, two can play that game. But this time you're going to have to prove yourself in having a big, massive 30-foot blimp of yourself flying over London. And we'll see how nice that is. See if you're willing to submit yourself to the same public humiliation you are so easily to Donald Trump.
Now, we're going to come back after the break and talk more about this. Talk about the sheer hypocrisy in Khan having nothing to say about, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia visiting the Islamist dictator Erdogan. Just want to read some stats, though, about London crime under Sadiq Khan since he came to power as mayor. Knife attacks have soared by 21%, shooting incidents by 23%, street robberies by 33%, motorbike robberies by 50%, and murders by 40%. In February and March, London had more murders. It exceeded the murder rate of New York. This is a giant problem. His previous excuse was to say, oh, but we did a report about that last month. And basically, it's getting worse and worse and worse. The police are being given fewer and fewer powers to actually chase these moped criminals, for example. They're trying to turn it round right now simply because of the massive public backlash. But again, these figures seem to be getting worse and worse. That's what you're going to be drawing attention to with this Sadiq Khan baby balloon. And it's going to be very intriguing how they respond to it. But we're going to talk about it more after the break on the Alex Jones Show Live, 4th hour InfoWars. We are back live and we're talking to Yanni Brewer about the Sadiq Khan baby inflatable balloon that he plans to fly over London next month. We're talking about the Trump baby balloon, which is set to fly over London this Friday. Now, just looking at some of the recent visitors to London, let's take a look at this shortlist. Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman. This is a guy who's presiding over war crimes in Yemen. He's presiding over the persecution of gays and women in Saudi Arabia. Who protested his visit to London? Barely anybody. Let's look at the Islamist dictator President Erdogan of Turkey. A guy who locks up journalists, a guy who tortures people, a guy who has his own goons beat people up in the United States. Who protested his visit? Barely anybody. Let's look at what's happening in Iran. Women are literally being tortured and imprisoned for removing their hijabs. There was another famous case of that happened this week. Where are the feminists? Where are the marchers on the Iranian embassies? They're not happening. Sadiq Khan said nothing about any of that. Nobody really protested it. Oh, but Donald Trump said, grab them by the pussy 13 years ago, and we're expecting 100,000 people out on the streets. Absolutely absurd, the level to which people allow themselves to be manipulated by fake moral outrage, fake hysteria. Yanni, how many of these people are going to be out protesting this weekend? because they feel a genuine moral urge to do so. And how many of them are going to be doing it, you know, for an Instagram selfie because they're vapid, virtue-signaling morons?
Yeah, I mean, I think with the anti-Trump thing, I think people are anti-Trump to be anti-Trump, aren't they? I don't think there's no real substance to any of it. Otherwise, they'd be out there, you know, campaigning against like the people you just mentioned. So a lot of it is to do with popularity. It's really popular. It's really cool to be anti-Trump. And if you're not anti-Trump, then you're uncool and basically you're silenced and you can't say that you're pro-Trump or anything. So a lot of it's just it's bullshit, isn't it, really?
It's that's exactly the word for it. It's also there's no Glastonbury this year, so they can't all shout for Jeremy Corbyn, so they're probably missing that. Let me read you this quote from the Trump baby balloon activist, your arch nemesis. He said, quote, "What could have been a day of infamy for Britain," he's talking about the visit of Trump, "instead becomes a day of national pride and unity." So he thinks he's literally going to create national pride and unity by flying this 20-foot Trump baby balloon. Yanni, how much unity do you think those people would exhibit in that crowd if you attended their protest wearing a red MAGA hat? Do you think they'd be very, very forgiving and very unifying in that situation?
No, I'm sure it would be the same as being, you know, fed to a pack of wolves if I was there wearing a Make America Great Again hat. So it's all kind of double standard, isn't it? It's completely double standards. What they say they tolerate and this kind of thing, they don't. It's the complete opposite. It's actually the people who are more pro-Trump on the right are the ones who are more tolerant.
It's incredible. Also, now this is not to advocate any illegal activity whatsoever. We obviously don't do that. But anybody who's been reading 4chan over the past few days knows that they've located where this Trump baby balloon is. As with past 4chan events, specifically with Shia LaBeouf and everything that happened with him, they're talking about bringing this inflatable balloon down. Do you see that happening? Do you think that's on the horizon, given how much chatter there is on 4chan about it?
I haven't seen the chatter on 4chan personally, but it would be good to see if it did come down. It'd be nice to see. I'm not, like you said, advocating that, but I think people underestimate just how irritating this event is, just how irritating this balloon is. And people underestimate it, and they think that everyone's anti-Trump in the UK, and it's not the case. It's just not the case. So you could well see it come down. You could see a counter-protest of some sort. But these people are so blinded by, these people in London, these anti-Trump, they're so blinded by themselves that they don't see anything else. They don't see that there is actually support for Donald Trump in the UK.
Yeah, I mean, it's really annoying when they claim to speak for everyone in the UK by being so intolerant of his visit while claiming that they're the tolerant ones. I mean, you had France. France basically got a jump on us. Again, the population of France, I imagine, are no great fans of Donald Trump in any large majority. It's probably the same as in the UK. But they got a jump on everyone. They arranged I think it was a state visit or the equivalent of, before anyone else. There were no giant protests, obviously a few, no giant protests. It worked out well for both countries. You know, they could get over their little butthurt and just acknowledge the fact that even if you don't like the president, you have to respect the office. And to ostracize the president, that's only going to harm our interests, as he said, when we need this Brexit deal, if even, Brexit happens at all at this point. But just in closing, Yanni, tell people how they can support the funding and the organization of this Sadiq Khan baby balloon event.
Yeah, so it's still on crowdfunding. We've got until the 9th of August. So we've been going 5 days. We've got £40,000. So it's a long way to go, the 9th of August for the funding. So the bigger the donations, the bigger the amount we raise, the bigger the balloon, the bigger the event. The more we can do on the day to help make London safe again. And if you want to get involved, you can contact myself on Twitter, or there'll be a few other details as well in the next coming days of who else to contact in regards to that. But yeah, keep the money coming in, and then, the more we raise, the bigger this event can be, and the more pressure we can put on Sadiq Khan.
Definitely. So people have got a few weeks to keep that money rolling in. You can stage a bigger and bigger event the more money you get, and basically have a real response to these people who claim to represent those in the UK. They don't. You've proven that by raising them in a matter of days. It took them a month to make what, £27,000. You made that in just over 3 days. Absolutely monumental effort. The real fight back begins. We will have our voice just as they have theirs, and we'll continue to monitor it. Yanni Bruer, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
There goes Yanni Bruer with the Sadiq Khan baby balloon protest. Be sure to go and find that and donate.
All right, boys, we made it to the end. It's one more broadcast in the bag. It's 11:57, which means I'm signing out 3 minutes earlier. We'll see y'all tomorrow, man. I'm gonna go roll in and take care of my back. Like I said, I got some Tiger Balm coming in the morning. Shoot sick pad up with meth. I'm sure that'll help, Aaron. Thanks. I'm sure I will be. I just fucking I hate back pain, man. It just sucks, generally speaking.